Chapter 17:14. No problem, said Huang Wuji, but he glanced at Yi Shiwen doubtfully. But why do you want to borrow the true martial stone's sword? I want to eradicate an internal threat in the school, said Yi Shiwen. Without waiting for Huang Wuji to recite, Yi Shiwen continued. It's the Star Beast. You should know about the Star Beast. Once it's released, the entire true martial domain will be destroyed. Although it's not as terrifying as the Abyss Demon Lord, it's not much less dangerous. I must eliminate it while I still have the ability. Also, I need to add another layer of protection for the school. Yi Shiwen's expression was firm. It seemed that he had completely decided on one thing. Huang Wuji frowned. What do you mean, while I still have the ability? He instinctively felt that something was wrong, but he didn't know where to ask or how to say it. Huang Wuji was a little worried, but at this time, the true martial school was in a carnival. This time, the demon-worshipping religion coalition attacked with all their might, but they were all killed by Yi Shiwen. For them, it was equivalent to being saved. During this period of time, the true martial school could be said to be in a state of panic. Even with 100 years of foundation, after being continuously defeated, their confidence began to waver. Not to mention that on the day when the Abyss Demon Lord descended, everyone felt despair. In the end, the Abyss Demon Lord was scared away, but it cast a shadow in the hearts of the true martial school's people. Now, as Yi Shiwen eradicated these people in one fell swoop, they naturally felt relieved. The true martial school was no longer in danger of being overturned. Although there was a more tyrannical Abyss Demon Lord, they weren't very clear about the strength of the Abyss Demon Lord. They also didn't know the difference between Yi Shiwen and the Abyss Demon Lord. In their opinion, the Abyss Demon Lord was only at Yi Shiwen's level. With just a wave of his hand, he completely defeated the demon-worshipping religion army that besieged the true martial school. Just like how the Abyss Demon Lord had the momentum to swallow the true martial school. The rest was just to beat the demon-worshipping religion. It wasn't difficult at all. In order to guard against these demon-worshipping religion demons that surpassed the transcendent realm level, Yi Shiwen personally led the true martial school to wipe out the strongholds of demon-worshipping religion. Everyone in the true martial school was excited, especially those of the younger generation. They had only heard about the legend of Yi Shiwen sweeping the world with him. Now, they actually had the opportunity to fight with Yi Shiwen. It was undoubtedly a great honor for them. Yi Shiwen was the only one who had the chance to fight with him. In particular, some disciples of the Yi clan were the first to charge and break through the enemy lines. Among them, Yi Fingyun's performance was the most outstanding. Coupled with Yi Shiwen's intentional guidance, Yi Fingyun made great progress in just a few months and directly entered the Great Sage Intermediate. Yi Shiwen had no solution to the Transcendent Realm First Level's barrier. He tried to let the true martial school's disciples cross this threshold, but the result was a failure. He realized that no matter what he did, it was useless. The laws of heaven and earth were incomplete. Under such circumstances, it was useless no matter how hard they tried. Although Yi Shiwen's current cultivation was already extremely impressive, he still couldn't achieve something like reshaping the laws. It would only be useful if they left the true martial domain and went to the ancient Baron's continent. He knew how the Abyss Demon Lord did it. It was direct empowerment. With the Abyss Demon Lord's martial power, even a little bit of martial power was enough to guarantee a person's cultivation. However, he wouldn't care even if it was 10 times stronger than before. Not to mention that there weren't any king-ranked martial artists. Even if there were, he would still crush them to death. This was because after a martial artist cultivated to a certain level, the competition was mostly a competition of laws. Even the martial arts practiced between each other were to drive more power of laws and more in line with the rules of laws. The more profound the martial arts, the more it was so. These devils had forcibly upgraded their martial power, but they didn't have such strength. Although their strength had increased, their perception of the realms had not changed at all. Yi Shiwen would kill these blockheads who only had strength but couldn't display their true strength. He would kill as many of them as they came. Because of this, Yi Shiwen couldn't imitate this path. For them, it was only beneficial and not harmful. The consequence of forcefully maintaining their strength was to burn their vitality forcefully. These demons who forcefully increased their martial power had their lifespan reduced by more than half. However, Yi Shiwen's martial power had improved to its current level. He could also feel that everything that he didn't understand in the past was now clear in his heart. He was afraid that the true martial university, or this region, had experienced a great war in the past. That battle had completely disrupted the laws of the entire area. It should be said that the high-level laws had been interrupted, and they had yet to recover. It was as if a powerful force was still lingering in the area, causing the laws of the area to be unable to recover to this day. However, Yi Shiwen still didn't know what kind of terrifying force could achieve such a feat, what kind of battle could disrupt the laws and the heavenly law, causing it to be unable to be restored. With Yi Shiwen personally leading the way, it was naturally much simpler. Everything was swept away wherever they went. The remaining experts who surpassed the transcendent realm were all slaughtered like chickens in front of Yi Shiwen. Countless altars were destroyed. It was because of these altars that the demon-worshipping religion people were able to summon the demons from the demon domain. Otherwise, these demons that surpassed the transcendent realm wouldn't be able to overcome the barriers of the laws and directly traverse the vast sky. Otherwise, the true martial domain would have already been destroyed. After killing all the demon-worshipping religion demons that surpassed the transcendent realm, Yi Shiwen didn't care about them anymore. The true martial school's strength was enough to deal with the rest. This was the so-called beating a drowning dog. After dealing with these, Yi Shiwen originally planned to go into seclusion to refine the true martial stone sword. The internal threat that he wanted to deal with was none other than the Star Beast. Speaking of which, it could be said that the hatred between the two sides was as deep as the sea. Yi Shiwen had ruined his plan and made his idea of getting out of trouble become an illusion. He had also successfully forced Yi Shiwen to plant a magic seed in him. This was the root cause of Yi Shiwen's imminent death. It was also the true martial school's biggest internal threat. If it wasn't eradicated, it would become a huge threat to the true martial domain sooner or later. Over the years, the Star Beast never stopped thinking about escaping. Yi Shiwen didn't have much time left. If he couldn't solve it in advance, he couldn't think of anyone else who could deal with the Star Beast in the future. However, before dealing with the Star Beast, Yi Shiwen went back to see his parents first. Now, the Yi family had completely migrated to the true martial school. Relying on the foundation that Yi Shiwen left behind in the past, the Yi family had developed into a huge family force in the true martial school. Early in the morning, the Yi family who received the news were waiting in the current Yi family's station in the true martial school. Yi Kongming and others were excited. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 years had passed. For warriors, this was not a very short time. For mortals, it was even more like a separation between heaven and earth. The others were some of the younger generation of the Yi family. At this time, they also came out to welcome the return of this legendary granduncle. Now, the Yi family had also developed to the 6th generation. The first generation was naturally Yi Kongming and Xia Chunxue, while the second generation was Yi Shiwen, Yi Feng, and Yi Ruxue. Yi Fengyun was already the 5th generation. The 6th generation was just some immature kids. So far, there were only a few of them. Yi Shiwen hurried back from the battlefield. Soon, he saw the Yi family. At a glance, there were already about 2,000 people. After hundreds of years of development, it was no longer the same as before. "Greetings, Granduncle! Greetings, Third Uncle!" These Yi family disciples knelt down one after another. Yi Shiwen just smiled. Then, he used his soft strength to lift them up. These juniors of the Yi family, especially those who had never seen Yi Shiwen before, were extremely excited at this time. They were also very emotional in their hearts. This support seemed to be nothing, but in fact, it showed Yi Shiwen's profound skills. "Father, Mother!" Yi Shiwen's voice was also a little trembling. After not seeing them for more than 100 years, how could he not be excited? "Well, Father, Mother, Third Brother, let's go in first and talk." At this time, Yi Feng said. In these years, Yi Feng had also entered the transcendent realm. In the true martial domain, he was also regarded as a master. Otherwise, he would not be able to lay the foundation of the Yi family today. Now, Yi Kongming was no longer the family master. The current family master of the Yi family was Yi Feng. "Third brother, you are too powerful!" As soon as they entered the inner house, Yi Ruxue looked at Yi Shiwen excitedly and said. After many years, her temperament had not changed. In addition, there were only the first and second generation of the Yi family now. There were no outsiders or juniors. Naturally, she did not have to pretend to be dignified and virtuous. Although Yi Ruxue's talent was not bad, her temperament was different from Yi Feng's after all. She had just entered the Great Sage realm these years. However, entering the Great Sage realm at her age was already considered very fast. "With a wave of my hand, a lot of people died. TSK, Yi Ruxue said exaggeratedly. The entire inner house was filled with laughter, as if they had returned to the way it was many years ago. It made Yi Shiwen's heart incomparably warm. Yi Shiwen did not intend to hide anything from Yi Kongming and others. He told them his experiences over the years. However, he still concealed the fact that his demon seed was about to break out. He did not want his parents to worry. Chapter 17-15. At worst, he could just disappear. Even if he disappeared, it would be much better than directly receiving news of his death. Hence, after thinking about it, he decided to hide the matter of the demon seed. After hearing Yi Shiwen talk about his experiences over the years, everyone sighed. Although Yi Shiwen hid a lot of dangerous places, just hearing a part of it was enough to make them sigh with emotion. Yi Shiwen's current strength was undoubtedly obtained through his fists, kicks, saber, and spear. He did not come here for nothing. However, they couldn't stop Yi Shiwen. They understood that Yi Shiwen was like a real dragon in the true martial world. He had locked his hands and feet. They wouldn't do such a thing. They wouldn't do it even if they were worried. Especially when he heard that Yi Shiwen had found his family. But he could not see his parents. Yi Kongming was even more emotional. In the past, he also received Yi Junshin's kindness. Otherwise, he would not have taken Yi Shiwen in back then. After chatting with his parents, Yi Shiwen stayed at home for a few days before starting his closed-door training. He did not have much time left. Every day, the progress of the demon seed could be said to be extremely fast. It could be said to be changing with each passing day. He did not know how much longer he could suppress it. Every minute and every second was crucial to him. After seeing his family on duty, Yi Shiwen directly started his closed-door training. He began to sacrificial refine the true martial stone sword. With the help of the true martial stone sword, he finally had the capital to fight against the Star Beast. Although the emergence immortal exterminating saber was not inferior to the true martial stone sword, because it was forcibly controlled, there was no way to truly unleash its full combat power. Hence, Yi Shiwen had to borrow the power of the true martial stone sword. With the correct sacrificial refined method given by Huang Wuji, Yi Shiwen could truly control the true martial stone sword. Even Huang Wuji could control the true martial stone sword through sacrificial refined method. With Yi Shiwen's current cultivation, it was needless to say. In fact, Yi Shiwen had used the true martial stone sword before. However, he had only used it for the first time and had not sacrificial refine it. At that time, sacrificial refine was useless. With Yi Shiwen's cultivation, it was impossible for him to truly control the true martial stone sword. Yi Shiwen was in a small world. He stood in the void, and the true martial stone sword released a powerful pressure in front of him. Boundless sword aura dispersed in all directions. "Senior, I need to borrow the power of the true martial stone sword this time. Please help me." Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said. At this moment, the true martial stone sword let out a clanging sound. Then, a figure materialized from within. It was an old man in a wide-sleeved robe. This was the sword spirit of the true martial stone sword. The emergence immortal exterminating saber also had a sword spirit. However, the sword spirit in the emergence immortal exterminating saber had been forcefully erased by Yishiwen. Hence, Yishiwen was unable to completely control the emergence immortal exterminating saber. Every time he used it, it would consume a lot of energy. This was also the reason why Yishiwen ultimately chose the true martial stone sword. I didn't expect that you would grow to such an extent in 100 years. It's impossible for such a top expert to appear in the true martial world now. Did you find the token and go to the ancient barons? The sword spirit wasn't flustered. It seemed as if he had seen through everything at a glance. Senior, you have sharp eyes. Yishiwen didn't show any disrespect towards the sword spirit of the true martial stone sword. In the history of the true martial school, the true martial stone sword had saved the true martial school countless times. As long as one came from the true martial school, no one would dare to disrespect it. No wonder. Ever since the battle of the deities, the world and laws were shattered. No one has been able to enter the celestial realm ever since, said the sword spirit of the true martial school. Battle of the deities? Yishiwen's eyes lit up. He had always wanted to know what happened in the true martial domain. Why did the true martial domain become like this? This is considered a secret from a long time ago. The sword spirit sighed and said, Actually, do you know that the human race didn't originate from the true martial domain or the ancient barons? Yishiwen listened attentively. He already knew that the human race didn't originate from the true martial domain. It was rumored that the ancestors of the human race also came to the true martial domain from the ancient barons. After countless years of fighting with the native clan, they finally conquered this huge territory. However, he didn't know that the human race didn't originate from the ancient barons. In fact, the human race truly originated from the mortal domain. In the ancient barons, a long time ago, there was another name called the demon domain, the sword spirit said. These things happened so long ago that not many people know about them. I've never talked to any of the previous mansion masters because it's too far away for them. But you're different. I can feel that you're very lucky. Your future is limitless. That's why I'm telling you. The demon domain. Yishiwen thought for a moment. Wasn't the master of the ancient barons a demon race? In that case, it was normal to call it the demon domain. Back then, the human race was nothing more than slaves and blood food that the demon race captured from all over the world, said the sword spirit. Yishiwen could imagine how miserable the ancestors of the human race had been as slaves and food. Later, the demon clan and the demon clan joined forces to attack a powerful world. As a result, they suffered heavy losses in that world. 72 demon deities and various demon deities suffered heavy casualties. They were chased all the way from that world to our world. The final battle broke out, forming the gods' battlefield. Countless years have passed since then. The true martial school could no longer produce warriors above the transcendent realm. Countless years later, it was the Star Beast rampage. That battle completely exhausted the last foundation of the true martial school. If it weren't for you, the true martial school might have already been destroyed. Senior Sword Spirit glanced at Yishiwen and said. His eyes were also filled with admiration. The Sword Spirit glanced at Yishiwen and said with admiration in his eyes. Just listening to the Sword Spirit, Yishiwen seemed to be able to see how terrifying that tragic battle was. The influence had not disappeared until now. The human race actually had other origins and inheritances? Yishiwen was silent for a while. The amount of information was a bit too much. It could be said that the Sword Spirit's words had opened a whole new world to him. Yemo wouldn't know these things even if he asked, because the era when Yemo was active was obviously countless years older than this. Does the senior know what the world they attacked was? Asked Yishiwen. I don't know about that. In fact, even our true martial school was just an insignificant small fry in that war. We only know that it was a war between the gods. We only know that the world should be dominated by the human race. After that war, the demon race suffered a great loss. The demon race also retreated back to the demon world in defeat. The gods fell. After that, the human race in the ancient desolation had the opportunity to rise. Later on, when the human race fought for hegemony in the ancient desolation, they naturally couldn't do without the help of our scattered forces in various worlds. Otherwise, how could the human race, who had been weak for a long time, survive in such an environment? The sword spirit spoke with a bit of pride in his expression. It was also because he had participated in that turbulent era. Forget it. Let's not talk about these ancient things. The sword spirit shook his head and said, because of that demon race, I was also seriously injured. Originally, I had to sleep for a long time to recover my strength. However, because of you, I could only wake up first. Even so, I can't help you much. I can only try my best to cooperate with you to refine the true martial stone sword. Thank you very much, Senior, said Yishiwen. This is nothing. This is what I should do, said the sword spirit. Yishiwen didn't say much. He sat down and started to refine the true martial stone sword in front of him. With the help of the sword spirit, it was naturally much better than the emergence immortal exterminating saber, which was difficult to refine. His body emitted a golden radiance. Countless golden radiances enveloped the true martial stone sword. With the help of the sword spirit, the true martial stone sword didn't struggle. It accepted Yishiwen's spirit and permeated it. Time was disappearing quickly, like a white steed flashing past a crevice. A month passed in the blink of an eye. For the entire month, Yishiwen sat motionlessly in front of the true martial stone sword. He was about to refine the true martial stone sword. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and grabbed the true martial stone sword. The true martial stone sword didn't struggle at all. On the contrary, the moment Yishiwen grabbed the true martial stone sword, he felt a blood connection with it. It was as if the true martial stone sword was a part of his body. Boom! The moment he grabbed the true martial stone sword, the aura on his body instantly exploded. It swept out forcefully and rose from the ground in an instant. When the entire world was about to be destroyed by the sword aura, Yishiwen withdrew all the sword aura into the sword. Yishiwen nodded in satisfaction. This way, the true martial stone sword was truly under his control. Of course, he was only refining it on the basis of the original Huang Wuji. He wouldn't compete with him for the ownership of the true martial stone sword. It's time to settle this score, Yishiwen sneered. His figure flickered, and he exited the small world. He went straight to the underground world where the star beast was suppressed. There were more and more exotic beasts here. After more than 100 years, many more exotic beasts had appeared. Chapter 17-16. However, at this time, these star beasts could no longer stop Yishiwen's advancement. In just a moment, Yishiwen had already arrived in front of the star beast's barrier. It's you? Star beast, who was still struggling in it, suddenly saw a figure in front of it at this time. It thought who it was, but it saw a person that it absolutely did not want to see. Yes, it's me, said Yishiwen. You still dare to show up? Star beast roared constantly. The last time it met Yishiwen, Yishiwen took advantage of it. Although Yishiwen did not have a good way to deal with this huge behemoth, it was enough to cause extremely serious damage to it. Why wouldn't I dare to show up? This time, I want you to die completely and completely eradicate the future trouble of the true martial domain, said Yishiwen coldly. Bastard, with just you! Star Beast continued to roar, and its huge body was constantly stirring. After not seeing it for more than 100 years, it had opened up a lot of talismans. At least, it was no longer like it was more than 100 years ago, where it could be completely bound and unable to move. The demon seed in your body is activated? Ha ha ha, I have finally waited for this day. I have already smelled the scent of the demon seed maturing. This star beast suddenly laughed crazily. Unfortunately, you can't wait for this day, said Yishiwen faintly. There was no change in his expression at all. You want my demon seed to explode, absorb all the martial power in my body, and finally feed it to you? How is that possible? Yishiwen sneered and looked at Star Beast. He came back for this purpose. He was planted with a demon seed, and now the demon seed had flourished. Once he died under the demon seed, all the martial power in his body would be absorbed by this star beast. At that time, he might have the ability to break the barrier. That was the most terrifying thing. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I'm not in a hurry. Ha ha ha, I can already feel the aura of the magic seed in your body. It's getting stronger and stronger. It won't take long for you to die on the magic seed. At that time, I might have a chance to escape after I absorb all your power. Star Beast Avatar laughed and said, originally, it was just constantly struggling. Even it did not know if there was a chance to escape in the future. However, it was different now. With Yi Shiwen providing nourishment, its hope had greatly increased. Unfortunately, you don't have this opportunity. I will give you a chance. Either sign a master-servant contract with me and work hard for me, or die, said Yi Shiwen with a cold face. His most ideal state was to be able to subdue the Star Colossus. At that time, the Star Colossus would become the greatest safeguard of the true martial domain. Although it might not be of any use against the Abyss Devil Lord, it was still better than having no backup arrangements. Ha ha ha, just you. Even if you work hard, it's useless. In the true martial domain, no one can break into the realm above the transcendent realm except for me. After the Battle of Gods, no one can reach it anymore. Star Beast sneered and said. Its huge face had a somewhat ferocious look. Battle of Gods, you also know about this battle? Yi Shiwen suddenly became a little curious. What's so strange about this? My ancestors had seen that battle with their own eyes. They even know where the battlefield was. This is something that the little Star Beast Avatar that you seized can't compare to, said the Star Beast Avatar with a sneer. It was simply dismissive of Yi Shiwen's Star Beast Avatar. You know about the Battle of Gods? That's even better! Yi Shiwen's eyes lit up. The Battle of Gods that year directly caused the entire true martial domain's laws to break, making it unsuitable for cultivation. He had to go and take a look at these reasons. As he spoke, he did not hide all the aura on his body. All of a sudden, all of it was released. The strong aura belonging to the Celestial Realm 9th level instantly permeated the entire underground world. This is the Celestial Realm 9th level? Impossible! How can you cultivate to the Celestial Realm 9th level? Suddenly, Star Beast, who had been very calm, finally couldn't continue to be calm at this time. He actually saw Yi Shiwen's strength, and he actually stepped into the Celestial Realm. For him, this was no different from a fantasy. Although 100 years had passed, 100 years' time was meaningless to him. In just 100 years' time, it was just the time for him to take a nap. How did Yi Shiwen step into the Celestial Realm in one go, and even the Celestial Realm 9th level? It was simply the most incredible miracle. No, even if it's the Celestial Realm 9th level, it's impossible to have such a terrifying aura like yours. This is far from the power that the Celestial Realm 9th level should have, Star Beast said in shock. What's impossible about this? Times change. This world is completely different from the world you were in before. Yi Shiwen didn't want to waste time. As he spoke, he directly pinched a seal. Suddenly, a gap appeared in the barrier, and he directly broke in. Today, let's call it a day. He glanced coldly at the Star Beast's body and slapped it directly with his palm. Boom! The entire sky collapsed in an instant. In the vast world of the barrier, the entire sky was unable to withstand the terrifying pressure and collapsed with a loud bang. Star Beast was about to be slapped to death on the spot. At this moment, this Star Beast suddenly opened its mouth, and a terrifying spirit bomb was spat out directly. The entire void shattered along the way, as if the road was crushed by something super heavy. Huge cracks appeared, and it went toward Yi Shiwen's big hand. Boom! The entire world was shattered, and the entire barrier began to shake violently. The terrifying shock wave formed was like a tide, surging in all directions. The entire world inside the barrier was like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds, like a big wave washing away the sand. You actually still have such strength? Yishiwen squinted his eyes in disbelief. This star beast could actually block his full-powered attack. One must know that after stepping into the 9th level of the celestial realm, he could even sweep away experts in the late stage of the celestial realm. In the end, this full-powered attack was completely blocked by the star beast. This star beast's millstone-like eyes were shining brightly. A terrifying power was boiling above its body, and there was endless pressure being released. Ha ha ha, this is nothing, Star Beast said with a cold smile. Back then, you just got lucky and got the corpse of a little guy who was just born. Do you think that we, Star Beasts, only have this kind of ability? You can't even imagine how frightening I was at my peak. I've been suppressed by the true Martial University for many years now, and my strength isn't what it used to be. However, it's still not something you can imagine. A mere 9th heavens of heaven realm is nothing to me. Even if you have entered the celestial realm, I am not afraid at all. I just deliberately tricked you to come in just now. This was actually just a conspiracy of Star Beast. If it did not use such a conspiracy, it could not do anything to Yishiwen at all. Only by tricking Yishiwen in and making Yishiwen think that it was easy to deal with, could it finally succeed in one fell swoop and devour Yishiwen. At that time, it could absorb Yishiwen's power through the demon seed. In that case, it had hope to escape. And at this time, this star beast finally made a move. Its claws shook the sky, and the colorful brilliance that was torn out was dancing. It was extremely gorgeous. It was completely unimaginable how terrifying this claw was. Last time, Yishiwen escaped. This time, it made up its mind to not let Yishiwen escape at all. At the same time, this star beast finally fully unleashed its territory. In an instant, the entire world became a scene of stars, making people feel as if they had entered a star. Countless stars were shining in the sky. But at this time, Yishiwen could feel a terrifying killing intent in it. These stars looked beautiful, but there was a hidden killing intent. It was extremely terrifying. Perhaps there was no way to kill Yishiwen directly, but it was more than enough to stop him. Yishiwen suddenly felt a terrifying power locking him in place. He had only felt this kind of power from the Jiuying Demon King and a few others. This was the terrifying power of the king rank in the celestial realm peak. Thinking of this, Yishiwen couldn't help but shudder. This star beast actually possessed such terrifying strength. The last time he was able to escape, to a large extent, was also relying on the suppression of the barrier on the star beast. After hundreds of years, the god-ruled chains that bound him had loosened at some point, allowing him to calmly exert stronger strength. This time, this star beast had become even stronger. It had displayed the dreadful strength of a king-grade expert. This made Yishiwen even more determined to eradicate it. If he allowed it to continue like this, it wouldn't take long for it to become stronger and stronger. Perhaps, it would finally have a chance to break free. At that time, it would be a terrible disaster for the true martial domain. Yishiwen didn't want to let it go on like this. Swoosh! Star Beast's huge claws that were like a small mountain instantly arrived. It directly clawed the sky, wanting to claw Yishiwen to death. Since it had fully revealed itself, there was no need to hold back. At this time, Yishiwen was trapped in the star beast's territory. It was as if he was stuck in a quagmire. He couldn't exert his speed at all. And the star beast's outbreak was too sudden. He could only go all out and take this blow. Boom! A terrifying power directly crushed Yishiwen's body. His body suddenly flew out like a kite with a broken string. Chapter 17:17. The terrifying power shook out a terrifying shockwave, surging in all directions like a tide. Yishiwen flew all the way for thousands of meters before barely stabilizing his figure in the void. He spat out a mouthful of blood directly. His tyrant body had achieved great success, but there was a huge gap between his realm and star beasts. If it were an ordinary person, he would have been slapped to death. In the past, he had been seriously injured by the Jiuying Demon King's spear and had almost been killed. But now, he had only suffered minor injuries from the Star Beast's all-out attack. They were both at the king rank, so Yishuan's progress was obvious. Circles of fluctuations constantly appeared in the void, like the surface of water being blown by the wind. Countless dust was swept into the sky. The first collision ended in a crushing defeat for Yishuan. Die! Immediately afterward, this star beast let out another loud roar, and the huge sharp claws directly clawed at Yishuan in the air again. The interval between the previous attack was only a breath's time. It did not give Yishuan any chance to breathe. It instantly clawed through the void along the way, and went straight to Yishuan's face, intending to crush his head. Swish! The demon wings on Yishuan's back instantly unfolded, and countless wind and thunder power rushed out, forming a domain of wind and thunder power around him. However, it couldn't spread out at all. Compared to the Star Beast's domain, it was far inferior. He could only barely support himself within a radius of less than 100 meters around him. However, this was enough for him to get out of the Star Beast's domain of countless star power. However, Star Beast's huge claws were irresistible. It directly broke through Yishuan's domain of wind and thunder power, as if it was nothing. It directly slapped at Yishuan's face on the spot. Swish! At the critical moment, Yishuan's figure directly turned into a golden light and dodged on the spot. Star Beast's claws directly grabbed from the void and burst the void. When Yishuan appeared again, he had already appeared behind Star Beast. Roar! Seeing that its attack did not hit, Star Beast roared angrily. It let Yishuan escape last time because of his speed. This time, it would not make this mistake again. You want to escape? This Star Beast looked up to the sky and roared. The terrible roar shook the universe. Its eyes were blazing fiercely. Explode! Suddenly, it roared loudly. Then, the stars that were originally floating around Yishuan all exploded in an instant. A series of explosions shattered the void, forming a terrible shock wave that instantly drowned Yishuan. Hong long long long! A huge mushroom cloud was formed in the void. It was completely unimaginable just how powerful this terrifying explosion was. Countless smoke and dust dispersed, and the void was restored by the laws. Yishuan was revealed after his death. He was completely included in a pair of wings, like a huge ball. But at this time, the pair of huge wings had been blown to pieces. There was no place that was intact at all. Yishuan was extremely shocked. This Star Beast was even more terrifying than what he had expected. Of the King of the Existence King. It was indeed incomparably frightening. A series of explosions caused the sky to be completely destroyed. You're actually not dead yet. You're really lucky. However, this is useless in front of me. The Star Beast roared. A terrible roar instantly turned into a sound blade that rushed towards Yishuan. Its speed could be said to be extremely fast. At this time, Yishuan, who had been passively attacked, finally counterattacked. His attack was as fast as lightning. He tore a huge sword light in the void and went straight towards the Star Beast. Boom! The sword light and the sound blade collided directly, sweeping up countless shock waves. The shock waves directly rushed out, and a fault appeared in the space. Even time seemed to be stagnant. The smoke and dust dispersed. In the middle, Yishuan stood in the void with a stone sword in his hand. He was like a god. His eyes were cold, and he looked at the Star Beast with murderous intent. Did you think that I would come here without any preparation? Yishuan said softly, as if he was talking to himself. This is the true martial stone sword. Damn it! The Star Beast's eyes suddenly flashed with countless murderous intent. It thought of the loss it suffered under the true martial stone sword. It could not be said to be small. Even if you had the true martial stone sword, a heaven realm mat like you will not be able to defeat me. Whether I can or not, you'll know once you try. Yishuan spread out his hands and directly slashed with the sword. Sword of Judgment! Suddenly, a terrifying sword light with a strong power of judgment swept out. Everything in the world had to accept its judgment. If it could not withstand the judgment, it would die under this power of judgment. The momentum of this sword was too great. It was completely different from the sword that was hurriedly blasted out just now. In the depths of the Tianyuan mirror, the dragon vein that was trapped by Yi Shiwen was continuously spitting out countless spiritual energy. It gathered into a long river and was directly infused into the true martial stone sword under the guidance of Qi. With the support of the spiritual energy provided by these dragon veins, the true martial stone sword in Yi Shiwen's hands could exert unparalleled terrifying strength. In an instant, the sword aura was overflowing and fell on the spot. Boom! The sword aura slashed horizontally. The sky turned upside down and the mountains and rivers were shattered. A terrifying force exploded in the void. The star beast struggled to resist. In an instant, a mushroom cloud rose up and completely submerged the star beast. It was earth-shattering and shook in all directions. If it was not within this barrier, this underground world would have been blasted apart. Amidst the smoke and dust, the star beast's claws that were protecting its front were already a bloody mess. The sword aura penetrated into its body and continuously eroded its flesh. That sword strike just now had actually injured him. The star beast's eyes were filled with disbelief. It was like a person who thought that they could easily trample an ant to death. Who knew that they would be bitten by the ant and injured? Die! At this time, a clear whistling sound came. Yi Shiwen's next wave of sword light had already slashed in before the smoke and dust had dispersed. He was also a veteran who had experienced hundreds of battles. How could he make such a mistake? How could he give Star Beast any chance to breathe? Roar! The Star Beast roared. The scales all over its body stood up. It directly grabbed out with its claws. Relying on its powerful flesh that could shatter the stars, it was not afraid to confront Yi Shiwen head-on. The sharp claws tore the sky, and the roar shook hundreds of miles. The barrier was constantly shaking in such a terrifying roar. It seemed that it could not hold on at any time and was about to break. The star beast's claws directly tore the sky and grabbed the sword light. It directly tore Yi Shiwen's sword light in the void. Boom! The sword light was torn on the spot and constantly collapsed in the void. The violent power swept up and rushed in all directions. This was the terrifying star beast. It was a terrible existence that lived by devouring the world of stars. It was the favorite of the heavens. In terms of physical strength, the human race was not at the same level as it was at all. They were born with terrifying strength that ordinary people couldn't imagine, especially this adult star beast. Although it had been imprisoned for many years, and its strength was no longer the same as before, it still had the terrifying strength of a celestial being, a king tier. However, in the void, Yi Shiwen's expression did not change. So what if the star beast's physical body was tyrannical? It must die today. Otherwise, the entire true martial domain would not be at ease. Clang! The true martial stone sword in Yi Shiwen's hand made a loud clanging sound as if it was completely excited. The true martial stone sword had not been able to fight to its heart's content for a long time. The younger generation of the true martial school had already lost the ability to control the true martial stone sword alone. Every time they activated the true martial stone sword, they needed to do a lot of preparation work. They did not know how many people had to be sacrificed, and how many people had to be sacrificed in order to succeed. Although Yi Shiwen could not completely control the true martial stone sword, compared to others, there was already an unimaginable gap. Sword of Creation! A ray of sword light shot out from the ancient times and rushed out of the river of time. It brought along a terrifying sword intent and blasted towards the star beast on the spot. It was a distant era when the world was still in chaos. Within the sword intent, there was a figure that was creating the world. Its power was unimaginable. Bang! The star beast tore through the sky and clawed at Yi Shiwen's sword intent. Bang! There was another loud bang. A large hole was pierced through the star beast's front left claw. The star beast had suffered greatly from the true martial stone sword's terrifying power back then. Without the true martial stone sword, it would have been impossible to seal the star beast with the true martial school's situation back then. Although Yi Shiwen could not unleash the true martial stone sword's full strength, the star beast was no longer the ferocious existence that could devour the world. Facing the sharp sword light of the true martial stone sword, even the powerful star beast felt that it was too much for it. Yi Shiwen did not give it any chance to catch its breath. He slashed down with his sword one after another. The sword light tore through the sky. It was dazzling, but every slash was fatal. Roar! The star beast suffered from Yi Shiwen's attacks again and again. It roared continuously and its body became bigger and bigger. It was about to use the magical power of the law of heaven and earth. Its entire body seemed to be surrounded by endless divine light. Boom! The sky was torn apart by its claw. At this moment, it still did not show any weakness and fought Yi Shiwen head-on. Chapter 17-18. Bang! 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 At this time, the collision between the two sides in the void was extremely cruel. Sword aura and claw shadows flew together. Both sides were extremely tough and did not give each other any chance to breathe. However, to be precise, Yi Shiwen did not give the star beast any chance to breathe at all. The star beast was also aware of its predicament. Although its physical body was incomparably tyrannical and could challenge the dragon clan, the true martial stone sword was obviously terrifyingly strong. Even at its peak, it could severely injure it, let alone now. Even if Yi Shiwen could not exert his full strength for the time being, it was enough to injure it. Yi Shiwen's swordsmanship was exquisite, but there were traces of big movements. In the past, this kind of opponent was his favorite because he could use his tyrannical physical body to crush the opponent. However, when it was Yi Shiwen's turn, he did not have a good way to deal with it. Although the recoil force was also great, for Yi Shiwen, who had stepped into the ninth heaven of the heaven realm and cultivated the tyrant body to perfection, it was still bearable. Bang! The star beast was finally sent flying by Yi Shiwen's sword. It was hard to imagine that its mountain-like body was sent flying by Yi Shiwen. However, at the moment when Star Beast was slashed out, it suddenly disappeared in a cluster of starlight. Oh no! Yi Shiwen was vigilant. The storm wings behind him swept up and he flew out on the spot. However, it was too late. The star beast's speed was extremely fast. In almost the next moment, it had already pounced in front of Yi Shiwen. It did not give him time to think at all and directly clawed at Yi Shiwen. The beast's claw that was like a small mountain instantly slashed in front of Yi Shiwen. Its speed was extremely fast. This star beast was also experienced in battles. Naturally, it knew that if it continued like this, it would be tortured to death by Yi Shiwen. Therefore, it could not go on like this. It had to take the initiative. If Yi Shiwen had a weakness now, it would be himself. The true martial stone sword was indeed very powerful, but no matter how powerful it was still restricted by Yi Shiwen's own strength. Yi Shiwen, who possessed the true martial stone sword, also possessed the capital to fight against the masters of the king rank. However, he was also the weakest in this area. As long as he could defeat Yi Shiwen, the true martial stone sword would be useless no matter how powerful it was. This star beast had been through hundreds of battles, and its eyes were extremely sharp. It had seen through Yi Shiwen's weakness almost instantly. Yi Shiwen's strength wasn't weak, but it wasn't enough to rely on his own strength to contend against experts at the peak of the heaven realm. Bang! This blow was extremely fast, and the huge figure of the star beast was not affected. Even though his movement technique wasn't as powerful as the Kuan Peng's, his speed was still extremely fast. It wasn't something that ordinary people could imagine. Yi Shiwen, who was completely unprepared, suffered a big loss because of this. He was blasted away on the spot. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. The power of the artifact was indeed not his own strength. However, no matter what, he had to kill the star beast today. Great Star Void Slash! The star beast let out a loud roar, and its body expanded continuously. In an instant, it seemed like it was going to become a giant that could reach the heavens and the earth. It directly slashed out an eternal ray of light. Every move was like a huge wave, and it instantly blasted towards Yishuin. A horizontal slash directly broke through the sky. The power of the martial way was earth-shattering. Wherever it passed, the void collapsed, and it continuously slashed down. In just a moment, it had already pounced in front of Yishuin. Both sides were determined to kill each other. They definitely couldn't let the other live. The star beast was even faster. It had to kill Yishuin completely. Boom! Yishuin didn't have enough time to prepare himself. He only had enough time to hurriedly set up a defense, and was suddenly blasted away. He flew a distance of hundreds of miles, and directly tore through the vast sky, just like a meteor streaking across the horizon. Ha ha ha, today, let me swallow you directly! The star beast's arrogant voice came over. It actually followed up again, and absolutely didn't give Yishuin any chance to escape. Immediately afterward, the star beast chanted a complex demon text, and the demon seed in Yishuin's body began to swell little by little in response. Damn it! Yishuin cursed secretly. The demon seed in his body was previously forcefully suppressed by him, so it didn't matter. But now, it actually began to swell up. The demon aura began to penetrate into Yishuin's body. It was like the roots of an old tree, densely taking root in Yishuin's body to absorb the power in his body. Yishuin shouted, and directly pinched a technique. Suddenly, the entire barrier began to activate. Countless God-ruled chains began to appear again, and directly locked the star beast. Roar! The star beast constantly roared, and constantly broke free from the God-ruled chains. Although it was impossible to restrain the star beast completely, the star beast had broken free from the shackles of many God-ruled chains over the years. However, there was still no way to break free for a while. This had also bought Yishuin some time. Yishuin, don't try to break free. It's useless. Your magic seed has begun to grow. It's useless. You can't escape at all. Star Beast Avatar continued to roar. Yishuin, don't try to break free. Even if that's the case, before that, I'll make you submit. Yishuin held the true martial stone sword in his hand. He couldn't control the demon seed in his body anymore, so he didn't care anymore. Anyway, this demon seed would only erupt earlier or later. For him, there was no difference at all. However, he had to get rid of the hidden danger of the star beast. He just slashed with his sword, and an earth-shattering sword slashed fiercely on the star beast's body. Bang! There was a loud sound of metal colliding. The star beast's chest was slashed by the sword on the spot, and blood immediately gushed into its body. The star beast, which was completely locked by the God-ruled chains, had no way to escape. It couldn't exert its previous speed at all. Bang! Another sword slashed directly on his body. Even though the star beast's body was as hard as gold and iron, after being slashed, blood gushed out and splashed out directly. Bang! 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 After a loud roar, the star beast was already dying from Yishuin's slashes. Blood flowed like a river, and the huge body of the star beast was splattered with blood. Yishuin looked at the star beast with a cold expression without the slightest sympathy. His hands began to pinch complicated seals. The star beast, which could still struggle initially, had no way to struggle at this time. Traces of black gas also appeared on his face. This was because the demon seed had completely invaded his brain. Even the ancient god scripture could no longer suppress it. He didn't have much time left. He could feel that the time for the demon seed to erupt was getting faster and closer. Boom! An ancient word splashed out from Yishuin's hand, and then blasted on the star beast's body with a loud bang. It directly sank into its body. What are you doing? This gesture is, bastard, you actually want to subdue me. The star beast suddenly woke up. He reacted at once. Yishuin wanted to subdue him in one breath. Yishuin sneered and said, Yes, I want to subdue you. He sneered. Regardless of the increasingly powerful demon seed in his body, he just constantly pinched out ancient words and blasted them into the star beast. Boom! The aura on his body was also skyrocketing at the same time. The Tao Heart Demon Seed itself was a kind of demonic method that promoted the cultivation of the furnace and the sower at the same time. After being planted with the demon seed, the person's cultivation would improve rapidly. The speed would be so fast that it would reach an amazing level. In a short time, the person could become a peerless master. However, in the end, no matter how amazing the cultivation was, it would eventually become the sower's food. The demon seed had been suppressed by Yishuan previously, so it did not fully show its ability in this aspect. Now that Yishuan could not suppress it at all, it finally showed its full potential. Yishuan's aura was increasing with every passing second as the demon seed continued to grow. Boom! 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 Yishuan ignored it. His expression was serious, and his heart was like still water. He kept typing out ancient words. He knew that he was about to succeed. As long as he succeeded, he could truly subdue the Star Beast. At that time, not only could he eliminate future troubles for the true martial school, but most importantly, with the strength of the Star Beast, it could definitely become a powerful talisman for the true martial school. At that time, many things could be avoided. Damn bastard! The Star Beast was astute and far-sighted. It immediately saw Yishuan's intention, but at this time, it could not struggle. It was locked by the God Rule chains. If it was during normal times, it could break out as long as it took some time. But now, it lacked this little bit of time. I'm not willing. Do I really have to surrender to this kid? The Star Beast kept roaring. At this moment, countless dark clouds began to condense in the sky, and countless thunder dragons were constantly rolling in it. Heaven's retribution. Yishuan was shocked. He looked up and saw that it was really heaven's retribution. He secretly cursed in his heart. Because of this demon seed, his cultivation instantly skyrocketed, and he could not suppress it anymore. It actually attracted the heaven's retribution of the celestial realm. Ha ha ha, Yishuan, the heavens have not forsaken me. You are dead. Chapter 17:19. Ha ha ha, Yishuan, the heavens have not forsaken me. You are dead. The Star Beast laughed and roared constantly. Yishuan glanced at the sky. In the sky, countless tribulation clouds were entrenched, and a terrifying power was boiling in it. Countless thunder dragons were entrenched in it. Even Yishuan, who had always been calm, began to be nervous at this time. However, his hands were still not slowed down, and there was no change in the slightest. Because he knew very well that it was useless to be nervous at this time. In the end, only Star Beast would benefit from it. Boom! 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 The ancient characters in his hands constantly blasted on the Star Beast's body. This Star Beast also constantly screamed. These ancient characters were like chains, firmly integrated into its flesh and blood, constantly evaporating its flesh and blood. It wanted to control its body and enslave its soul. It kept struggling, trying to break free, but there was no way at all. Yishuan's cold reaction made it feel desperate. It could hardly imagine how a person could be indifferent to such an extent. Even if he knew that heaven's retribution was coming, his expression did not change at all, and his actions did not change in the slightest. He was simply indifferent like a robot. In other words, the person who was going to experience heaven's retribution was not him at all, but another person. It was simply unimaginable how cold-hearted such a person would have to be like this. Voila! After a long time, finally, the first bolt of lightning directly struck down. Boom! There was a huge roar. The first lightning seemed as if it was going to split the heavens and the earth. A terrifying power boiled in the void and directly fell on Yishuan's body. It directly swept up a huge storm. The storm dissipated, and Yishuan's whole body was like a bloody man. His whole body was a complete mess of flesh and blood. Soon, the wounds on his body recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the demon seed was constantly growing, it also brought unprecedented vitality to his body, as if all the vitality in his whole body would be burned away in a short time. Yishuan's whole body shook, and blood flowed down from his head. His whole body seemed to be burnt. However, the seals on his hands did not stop for even a moment. Yishuan, are you crazy? You don't care about the heavenly tribulation? Seeing that Yishuan didn't care about the heavenly tribulation at all, and was condensing one ancient character after another, Yishuan's expression changed. It continued to fall into the star beast's body. Streaks of seven-colored divine light kept splashing out. Yishuan remained unmoved. Crash! 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 Streaks of lightning, like sharp swords, directly struck Yishuan's body. In the void, Yishuan's body was surrounded by countless golden lights, which condensed into an armor-like shape and surrounded him. He also sped up his movements. Almost done, just a little bit more! Yishuan shouted in his heart. Give me some time, give me some time! Although countless lightning bolts directly struck his body, they couldn't stop his movements at all. His strength was increasing every minute and second, and these injuries were also constantly recovering as his aura continued to rise. Roar! The seal technique had entered its final stage. The star beast struggle was getting more and more intense, and more than half of the god-ruled chains had been broken off. Just as it was about to break free completely, countless lightning bolts struck down from the sky and blasted it into the ground. Roar, why did you strike me? God, are you blind? He kept roaring. But at this time, it was simply too late. Yishuan had completed the last seal and struck the last ancient character into the star beast. Surrender to me! Yishuan's shout was like a great bell. It instantly poured into the star beast's ears. Even in this environment where the sky was full of thunder and lightning, it was extremely clear. How is it possible? Don't even think about it! The star beast suddenly let out a terrifying roar. It wanted to resist, but it felt a terrible force binding it, forcing it to kneel down. Its huge body directly laid down, unable to move. It wanted to resist, but it was simply powerless. If it wanted to have the slightest thought of resisting, there would be a heart-wrenching pain that tore its whole body apart. Yishuan sneered. From now on, you can only be in existence like my servant. Rumble! Rumble! A series of violent thunderbolts exploded on Yishuan's body. Yishuan was caught off guard, and was blasted out on the spot. He directly hit the barrier, and the entire barrier had a huge fluctuation. Ha ha ha, go to hell, go to hell! The star beast saw Yishuan being blasted away, and suddenly laughed. It was in an extremely carefree mood. But just when he had such a thought in his heart, he suddenly roared in pain as if he had been electrocuted. Some of the thunder and lightning that constantly fell from the sky also directly struck his body. If he was struck by heaven's retribution just now because he intervened in the place where Yishuan was crossing the retribution, then at this time, he was struck because he had become Yishuan's battle pet. At this time, it was not just a few thunderbolts that struck his body occasionally, but hundreds of thunderbolts directly fell on his body. Damn, this kid, what the hell is he? Why is heaven's retribution so terrifying? He kept roaring and struggling. He was completely stunned. Even a star beast like him was not so terrifying when crossing the heaven's retribution of the celestial being retribution. In other words, it was not the same thing at all. Back then, his most terrifying heaven's retribution was only comparable to Yishuan's first wave of heaven's retribution. If this continued, wouldn't it be a world-ending heaven's retribution? Within the range of heaven's retribution, it would be hard to survive. He could withstand it because his realm was much higher than Yishuan's, and his physical body was also very strong. But even so, when these heaven's retribution fell, it was still like a sharp blade slashing on his body, causing his skin to split open. Boom! 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 Bolts of thunderbolts fell, and this was only a small portion. The most terrifying thing was that most of the heaven's retribution was concentrated on Yishuan's side. He could not imagine how Yishuan was going to resist the heaven's retribution of the celestial being retribution. He had never heard of it before. Who the hell was this person? Any one of these heavens' retribution was comparable to the full blow of an initial celestial being retribution expert. Attacks of this level weren't too fatal for him. However, when dozens or hundreds of such attacks came crashing down on him, even he would be split open and his flesh would be lacerated. What he couldn't imagine was that Yishiwen was actually able to hold on until now. At this moment, Yishiwen had to face the attack of thousands of lightning bolts striking down at the same time. Any one of them could heavily injure an initial celestial being retribution expert, and completely annihilate a level 9 celestial being retribution expert. Such a heaven's retribution was simply a world-ending calamity for a level 9 celestial being retribution expert. Encountering such a calamity was basically the end of one. How many bad things did one have to do for such a calamity to descend from the heavens? Yishiwen couldn't help but laugh bitterly. The heavens really didn't give him any way out. The heavens' retribution was unprecedentedly terrifying. It was a new level of strength that Yishiwen had gone through in the past. But even so, he didn't have any intention of giving up in the face of internal and external troubles. The true martial stone sword in his hand was also continuously slashing out shocking sword light. Boom! 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 Although these lightning bolts were terrifying, they were still far inferior to the true martial stone sword. However, even with the protection of the true martial stone sword, it still didn't have much of an effect when facing the overwhelming heaven's retribution. Boom! 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 These lightning bolts struck down directly on Yishiwen's body. They didn't give Yishiwen too many chances at all and directly forced him to retreat. Yishiwen's figure kept retreating in the void. The star beast at the side didn't have any intention of helping him at all. It couldn't wait for Yishiwen to be struck to death by the heaven's retribution. If that was the case, it would at least feel better. Yishiwen's complexion was completely unrecognizable. Fresh blood covered his entire face, and his body seemed to be bathed in fresh blood. Flesh and blood were constantly being split open on his body, and then they were permeated by an even more powerful demonic aura. His wounds were also recovering at an even more shocking speed. If it wasn't for the demonic seed continuously spitting out powerful energy, Yishiwen would have been completely annihilated in the heavens' retribution. Boom! 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 Yishiwen's entire body was in an endless sea of lightning, and his figure was almost invisible. At this time, the star beast could only vaguely see that Yishiwen's body was completely submerged in the sea of lightning. The defeat was getting more and more tragic. Boom! There was only an incomparably loud roar, and a huge torrent of energy instantly swept out from Yishiwen's body. Immediately after, it was submerged by even more terrifying lightning bolts. In the void, countless terrifying figures actually appeared. A higher level of heaven's retribution had already formed impatiently, and then it rushed over from the void. Boom! The terrifying heaven's retribution soldier was like a sharp blade, and it directly stabbed into Yishiwen's body. Then, the star beast suddenly couldn't sense Yishiwen's aura. Could it be? He's dead! Chapter 1720. Could it be? He's dead! In the void, a young figure was shuttling through the universe. He muttered to himself from time to time. It's impossible. How amazing and talented is my granduncle! How could he be dead? However, he continued to deny his own judgment. But in the blink of an eye, 100 years have passed. Even our true martial school has come out from the demon-worshipping religion's chaos. Why can't I see my granduncle's figure? This person was none other than Yi Fengyan. At this time, he was constantly searching in the void. In fact, such a search had happened countless times in the past hundreds of years. Almost every once in a while, he would come out to search. He absolutely couldn't believe that his great-uncle, who was able to make the entire Bai Majiao army die tragically, would actually die. Although the small world had completely collapsed and was a scene of devastation. The star beasts that were originally used for the newcomers to practice were also completely extinct. It was said that a great enemy of the true martial school was imprisoned there. However, he had completely disappeared in the chaos. Soon, the true martial school's higher-ups sealed off the area and blocked the news. After 100 years had passed, not many people still remembered that place. Yi Fengyan was one of them because his granduncle had disappeared in that place. For him, his granduncle had been his biggest idol since he was young. He grew up listening to Yi Shiwen's legend. He didn't believe that the myth and legend he firmly believed in would be destroyed one day. Even after 100 years, he had already entered the transcendent realm. He became the first peerless genius to enter the transcendent realm in the true martial school. It was even shorter than the time Yi Shiwen took to enter the transcendent realm. He had already become the top genius of the true martial school's new generation. He was already one of the higher-ups of the true martial school. However, he still didn't give up searching. It was because he firmly believed. However, he also knew that this hope was very slim. For hundreds of years, the higher-ups of the true martial school had organized countless searches. They had explored this part of the universe countless times, but they didn't find any traces that they wanted to find. Back then, Yi Shiwen had suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only the dilapidated alien battlefield. It was as if it had been baptized by lightning and turned into smoke and dust. The only thing that was left behind was the true martial stone sword that Yi Shiwen had borrowed back then. No one knew what had happened to it. Perhaps only a few higher-ups of the true martial school knew. After that, the true martial school never organized a search again. It seemed that they had already confirmed something. He also knew that the chances were slim, but he was still very unwilling. Just as he was about to leave after searching for a while, he didn't find anything. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure gathered in the sky. Boundless tribulation clouds condensed in the void. In the void of the universe, even a huge star was just a grain of sand in the ocean. However, this tribulation cloud looked incomparably huge. Someone is undergoing tribulation. He suddenly realized that it was impossible for such a large cloud to form naturally in the universe. There was only one possibility, and that was that someone was undergoing a tribulation. However, this terrifying pressure shocked him. He was extremely shocked. Just approaching it from afar made him feel suffocated. It was as if he was going to kneel down under the pressure of the tribulation in the next second. Who is undergoing tribulation? It's so terrifying! He looked over and could only see a green figure standing in the middle of the tribulation clouds. He wasn't tall, but he was like a mountain, incomparably majestic. That's Granduncle! He immediately realized that it couldn't be wrong. If his senses weren't wrong, it couldn't be wrong. However, compared to 100 years ago, Yi Shiwen's aura seemed to be stronger. It was so strong that people couldn't even look at him directly. He was like a god. 100 years, 100 years. Come on, this time, let's fight to our heart's content. Yi Shiwen's eyes quietly looked at the tribulation clouds in the void. His expression was extremely calm. Before he knew it, over 100 years had passed. When he went through the heavenly tribulation 100 years ago, he had used up almost all of his resources. Even he himself had died under the heavenly tribulation, unable to escape. Just when he thought he was going to die, he persevered. Even his body was blasted into a bloody mess, almost turning into powder. When he was about to die, the magic seed actually matured. After maturing, the magic seed began to spit out power. The power that should have been absorbed by Star Beast Avatar was all instilled into Yi Shiwen's body in one breath, hanging on to his life. Then, little by little, he finally recovered to the current point. Now that he thought about it, it was probably because Star Beast had been subdued by him, so the demon seed had undergone such an amazing change. He thought he would die under heaven's retribution, but he didn't expect it to be a blessing in disguise, and he suddenly obtained such great benefits. Compared to the past, the current him had undergone earth-shaking changes. He was powerful to an unimaginable extent. Over the years, the demon seed had been secretly absorbing his martial power. Originally, this martial power would have been completely transferred to the Star Beast. But now, it was completely absorbed by Yi Shiwen. It was conceivable that the release of hundreds of years of martial power had all concentrated on him. He had grown to an astonishing level all of a sudden. In 100 years, he finally completely healed his body that was severely damaged under heaven's retribution. At the same time, he absorbed most of the power in the demon seed. He finally completed the nirvana process and was reborn from the void. He was reborn in a powder-like state. However, he had just been reborn. Heaven's retribution was almost like a ghost, following him like a shadow. Yishiwen looked coldly into the void. The heaven's retribution that was delayed for hundreds of years was finally coming again. But this time, Yishiwen was already different. When Yishiwen faced heaven's retribution 100 years ago, he couldn't do his best at all. He had to think of ways to deal with Star Beast. Moreover, this heaven's retribution came too suddenly. He was almost unprepared. But now, it was already different. Walalala! Countless electric dragons swept over and directly blasted towards Yishiwen. In the void, these electric dragons were constantly roaring. They rumbled and rushed towards Yishiwen. At this time, Yishiwen's body spewed out countless divinities. In the void, it turned into a sharp sword and slashed towards the electric dragons that swooped down from the void. Boom! 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 The electric dragons were blasted by him in the void. The heaven's retribution that could cause terrible damage to Yishiwen 100 years ago was like a great calamity that could destroy the world. At this time, it could not even get close to him. It directly exploded in the void. More and more thunder dragons condensed in the void, but they couldn't get close to Yishiwen. His body had condensed into a golden sword, and it seemed as if it had formed a natural protective umbrella around his body to protect him. He has become stronger again. In a pile of meteorites in the distance, a huge star beast was lying in it. After hundreds of years, the aura on his body had become a lot stronger. The bed formed by the repeated encounters with Yishiwen and heaven's retribution seemed to have completely recovered. Now that he remembered that he almost died under heaven's retribution, he still felt incomparable palpitation. Just a little bit more and he would have completely died under heaven's retribution. If Yishiwen did not collapse in the end, the one who died under heaven's retribution would definitely be him. However, he was also very lucky. If Yishiwen did not collapse first, perhaps he would have been dead for a long time by now. What he did not expect was that Yishiwen had already turned into powder, but Yishiwen was still alive. Although he watched Yishiwen being blasted into powder, he knew that Yishiwen was definitely not dead. The reason was very simple. Because Yishiwen was fine, which in itself explained the problem. He had signed a contract with Yishiwen. In other words, regardless of whether he was willing or not, once Yishiwen died, he would definitely die as well. The power of this rule was above his law, and he couldn't violate it. During these hundreds of years, he had been hiding and secretly healing his injuries. It was not only the injuries left by the battle with Yishiwen and heaven's retribution. More importantly, the countless years of imprisonment had caused damage to his bone marrow. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he would not have just finished healing after hundreds of years. He did not know how long it would take for him to recover his cultivation. During these hundreds of years, he arranged the illusion array to deceive the people from True Martial School who came to search for him. He did not dare to leave for a moment. It was ridiculous to say that although he could not wait for Yishiwen to die, in fact, he did not dare to let Yishiwen die. Because if Yishiwen died, then he would also die. He did not know what was Yishiwen's current situation, but he knew that Yishiwen was definitely not dead. Therefore, he could only deceive this area and not let anyone disturb him. With his cultivation, even if he was not at the peak, these people from True Martial School could not detect him. Although he also wanted to devour True Martial Domain in one breath for revenge, this idea was just a thought. If he dared to do so, he was sure that if Yishiwen was resurrected one day, it would be his death. People under the eaves had to bow their heads. However, he did not know what kind of transformation Yishiwen had experienced in the past hundreds of years. It was a kind of nirvana. Chapter 1721. That was a kind of nirvana. Yes, in these hundreds of years, Yi Shiwen was experiencing a kind of nirvana, a kind of unprecedented nirvana. Legend has it that the masters of the Phoenix clan would undergo a nirvana every once in a while. When their nirvana was completed, the strength of the whole person would undergo a rebirth. And Yi Shiwen was experiencing such a nirvana. Yi Shiwen, who had the Phoenix regeneration technique, had been constantly operating over the years. To some extent, he was already very close to the physique of the Phoenix clan. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to survive after his body was blown into powder just by relying on the power output of the demon seed. The real root cause of his survival was because the Phoenix regeneration technique in his body had finally broken through, and it had broken through to a whole new level. For many years, Yi Shiwen had been practicing the Phoenix regeneration technique, but he had already practiced to the peak of the second level, but he had been unable to deduce the state of the third level. The first level of the Phoenix regeneration technique was extremely fast for the recovery of the physical body, and the second level of the Phoenix regeneration technique could also quickly recover the spirit and the bed of the soul. However, after Yi Shiwen stepped into the peak of the second level, he had been unable to practice the legendary third level. Just like the tyrant body, he was stuck there, unable to advance or retreat. And this time, he was blown into powder, which actually coincided with the essence of the Phoenix regeneration technique, which was nirvana. Only through nirvana could one be reborn. And this time, he was really blown into powder, meeting the requirements of nirvana. Under the guidance of the Phoenix regeneration technique and the support of the demon seed, he could be reborn. However, this process took hundreds of years. Bit by bit, he recovered and was reborn. The process was extremely long, but he felt how lucky he was to be able to survive under such circumstances. Moreover, the Phoenix regeneration technique had also successfully entered the third level, which was another brand new realm. His skills had also experienced an explosive increase. Compared to 100 years ago, he could not be mentioned in the same breath. 100 years ago, he was only able to defeat a master of the celestial realm late stage. Now, even if it was a master at the peak of the celestial realm, he no longer cared. This was strength, true tyrannical strength. And at this time, in the void, the tribulation clouds also became denser and denser. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen's careless attitude had thoroughly infuriated the heavens. The heavenly tribulation suddenly increased by several times, and the terrifying power instantly boiled up. The thunder dragons that filled the sky directly turned into lightning exotic beasts, whistling as they pounced towards Yi Shiwen. But Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all, and directly rushed up. He did not wait for the heaven's retribution to attack him. He wanted to attack the heaven's retribution. For the past 100 years, he of the retribution of the retribution of retribution, he had accumulated too much resent, and he had not been able to fight for a long time. Riaf of retribution. Yi Shiwen's fist blasted out. The dreadful fist energy distorted into a mass of universe, and swallowed a lightning ominous beast that had pounced towards him. Not a single bit of it was left behind. It transformed into energy that filled the sky, and poured into Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen felt that the power of these retribution beasts was not inferior to the celestial realm intermediate master. This heaven's retribution really went all out just to deal with him. For him 100 years ago, this might be a fatal threat. However, for Yi Shiwen, who had fully recovered and eliminated the internal injuries in his body, this was still not enough. Boom! Yi Shiwen took a step, and formed a powerful shockwave that swept out in circles. The lightning beasts that were pouncing towards him from all directions were turned into a mass of powder. They weren't Yi Shiwen's match at all. So strong! In the distance, Yi Fengyun looked at Yi Shiwen, who was in the midst of retribution. She was incomparably shocked. In this heaven's retribution, any of the retribution beasts might be able to destroy the current true martial school. However, in Yi Shiwen's hands, they could not even withstand a single blow. They were like paper tigers that were easily destroyed. Compared to such heaven's retribution, the transcendent realm retribution that he had just passed a while ago was nothing. Heaven's retribution was as gentle as a sheep. For the true martial school's experts, the transcendent realm retribution might be the most horrifying and difficult to pass in their lives. If they could not pass it, they would turn into ashes. However, once they passed it, they would immediately become one of the higher-ups of the true martial school. It could be said to be the difference between life and death. However, compared to the heaven's retribution that Yishuan had passed, it was not on the same level at all. Looking at it from afar, one could feel a wave of coercion sweeping over. The heaven's retribution was impressive, as if it was angry and roaring. Originally, heaven's retribution should not have any emotions. However, at this moment, it felt like it was angry. It seemed to be angry that Yishuan dared to challenge the heaven's retribution. In this scene, not only Yifengyan, but even the star beast was a little stunned and a little scared. It didn't even know how long it had lived in its life. It could be said that it didn't know how many so-called geniuses it had seen, but absolutely no one's retribution was so horrifying. It didn't know how much sin this person had committed, or how much of a genius he was. Did the heavens need to test him like this? Did it need to use such heaven's retribution to destroy the world? Even if it were to destroy the world, such heaven's retribution would be enough, but it was used to deal with a person. This kid is really not simple. Looking at this scene, the star beast, who was not convinced by Yishuan at all, seemed to have a little fluctuation. Although it was forcibly conquered by Yishuan, it did not mean that it had surrendered to Yishuan. In its view, Yishuan was just using tricks. To conquer it, Yishuan was still 100,000 years away. Yishuan didn't deserve to talk about conquering it at all. Although it couldn't resist, it was definitely not convinced. But at this moment, looking at Yishuan's expression, it made it a little suspicious. Maybe this person was not as simple as it thought. Maybe following this person was not a bad thing. Although he was just an impolite fellow of the human race, he didn't seem to be completely useless. At this moment, Yishuan naturally didn't know that there were two people watching him go through the retribution. Instead, he was fully focused on the battle. Although these celestial realm intermediate lightning beasts were not his match, there were too many of them, so even he had to be careful. Otherwise, he might really fail miserably. Pun! 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 The more Yishuan fought, the stronger he got. As he continued to attack, his control of this brand new body after Nirvana became stronger and stronger. The strength that he could display was also stronger and stronger. Compared to the beginning when he was still a little inexperienced, it was completely different now. Hundreds of years of grievance were all vented out at once. It was really satisfying. His moves became more and more natural. Each and every move contained the principles of laws. They weren't moves that were casually used. Finally, after a long while, the last lightning beast was completely destroyed by him. And at this moment, a horrifying beast was formed in the void. To think that it was a mystical dragon. This divine dragon was condensed in the void. It was the size of a small mountain and looked incomparably terrifying. Its face was ferocious, and each scale was vivid and lifelike. It was as though a real divine dragon had come back to life. Yishuan's expression became a little solemn. He knew that although these lightning beasts were formed from lightning energy, they were actually not weaker than the original living beings. In fact, they were even stronger than the original living beings. There was even a possibility that the heavenly Tao had extracted the consciousness of these dead powerful beasts, and used lightning to form this body. So even if it wasn't a real divine dragon, it made Yishuan feel extremely solemn. What, that's a divine dragon? Yifengyan was already shocked. Yishuan's heaven's retribution was not only the most difficult kind of heaven's retribution to pass according to the legends, but it also manifested a terrifying ancient beast like the divine dragon. He had almost only seen this kind of beast in pictures. He had never seen a real one. Yishuan's heaven's retribution was actually this kind. This made him directly stunned on the spot. Roar! This divine dragon clawed at Yishuan almost as soon as it was condensed. It didn't have the slightest delay. It was extremely fast. The dragon claw clawed out countless traces of the principles, which were forcibly clawed out by it. Well, it's said that the great accomplishment of the tyrant body can challenge the gods and kill the dragon clan. I'll give it a try. After Yishuin's face became solemn, an expression of eagerness appeared on his face. He didn't dodge. He directly spread out his palm and formed a dragon claw. He directly clawed at it on the spot. The great dragon capture technique. A dragon's roar came directly from his body. His entire person seemed to have turned into a humanoid dragon. Bang! An incomparably loud roar accompanied the collision of the two dragon claws in the void, sweeping up a terrifying storm, directly annihilating the lightning dragon that was still falling from the sky. Roar! Countless energy storms dissipated, but the dragon could be seen constantly roaring angrily. Its front claw had been completely smashed. In the competition of physical strength, Yishuin almost gained the upper hand in an instant. So strong! Yishuin looked at his palm with an excited look on his face. His tyrant body had become unprecedentedly tyrannical after hundreds of years of nirvana. He would have been able to fight evenly with this vicious dragon if it had been 100 years ago. However, he could smash the dragon's claw with just one palm strike now. Of course, this was related to the improvement of strength. However, the tyrant body also seemed to have undergone unknown changes in the past 100 years. It had become more tyrannical. Ha 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 ha, take another punch from me! Chapter 1722. Ha 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 ha, take another punch from me! Yishuin burst into loud laughter. He took a step forward, and appeared in front of this huge dragon in an instant. Although the dragon's front claw was directly smashed by Yishuin, it was not affected. After all, it was a body condensed by thunder and lightning. It did not matter at all. Immediately, the other dragon claw was smashed down directly. Boom! Yishuin directly confronted it. The entire void was shaking crazily. It was unknown how terrifying the physical strength of both sides were. It could be said that the strength could uproot a mountain and capture the stars and the moon. Just the collision of their physical bodies could shake the heavens. What kind of terrifying power was this? Boom! Another dragon claw of this ominous dragon was blown up by Yishuin. It only persisted for a while, and it was directly smashed by Yishuin. At this time, Yishuin was like a humanoid monster. It was very terrifying. Roar! This dragon roared continuously. Its other dragon claw had finally recovered 70 to 80%. It was about to blast towards Yishuin again. But at this time, Yishuin was one step ahead and directly rushed in front of this huge dragon. Roar! This dragon opened its big mouth and swallowed Yishuin directly. It disappeared all of a sudden. How could this be? Yifengyan, who was in the distance, saw this scene. She was suddenly shocked. How could Yishuin, who had the upper hand just now, be swallowed by this lightning dragon all of a sudden? He suddenly became a little anxious. If it was not because the tribulation cloud had not dispersed yet, and it was emitting a powerful coercion that blocked him outside, he would have rushed in immediately. In contrast, the star beast was much calmer because it did not feel any threat to its life. Most importantly, the tribulation cloud had not dispersed yet, which meant that no matter what, Yishuin should not have received any fatal threat. Therefore, he was not in a hurry. Moreover, he did not dare to rush in at this time. Once he did, the heavenly tribulation might immediately be upgraded and become a stronger version. If that happened, the gathering would become a disaster. That was not what he wanted. Although he couldn't wait for Yishuin to die immediately, but he couldn't just watch him die, because if something happened to Yishuin, he would immediately sense it. Boom! Sure enough, as expected by the Star Beast avatar, there was a huge roar in the entire sky. A terrifying force blasted out of the dragon's belly and rushed straight into the sky. It was Yishuin. He had blasted a huge hole in the belly of the vicious dragon. Then, Yishuin's figure jumped out of the hole. At the same time, a powerful and terrifying tail swung down like a mountain. It happened almost at the same time. It could be said to be extremely fast. If it was a normal creature, Even if it was a dragon, it would have died from severe injuries. Quick! 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 It was so fast that it almost didn't give Yishiwen any chance to breathe. Whoosh! However, Yishiwen's speed was even faster. He directly dodged it on the spot. Boom! On his body, countless power of wind and thunder spread out. A terrifying power of wind and thunder directly spread out, forming a domain of the power of wind and thunder. In this domain, he was the ruler, the god of wind and the god of thunder. No matter how ferocious the vicious dragon below was, it was not a true dragon after all. Yishiwen lived in the domain of the power of wind and thunder. Although this vicious dragon was very fierce, the thunder and lightning that it had unleashed had been absorbed by Yishiwen's domain. Instead, it had become a great tonic for Yishiwen's domain. Boom! Yishiwen opened his hands, and directly grabbed this incomparably huge dragon's tail. Then, he suddenly exerted his strength, and suddenly grabbed this incomparably huge divine dragon in his hands. Then, he ruthlessly threw it out. Boom! This incomparably huge ferocious dragon ferociously crashed into the innumerable meteorites in the distance, instantly wiping out a wave of these meteorites. Before it could react, Yishiwen directly chased after it. He directly stepped down with his foot. The sky seemed to be completely shattered in an instant, forming a terrible shock wave. Yishiwen directly stepped through the body of this divine dragon on the spot. This incomparably ferocious dragon wasn't a match for Yishiwen at all. Yishiwen had made full use of this gap to the extreme. Boom! 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 Yishiwen continued to stomp on the ground one after another. Every time this vicious dragon wanted to escape and struggle, it would be kicked down by Yishiwen. Every time, it would fall very far. Then, Yishiwen directly stepped through it. Yishiwen's powerful strength was fully reflected at this time. Damn, it's too brutal! Star Beast on the side, at this time, looked at Yishiwen, who was under heaven's retribution, speechlessly. He had seen many people crossing heaven's retribution, but it was the first time he saw someone crossing heaven's retribution in such a brutal way. Whether it was the fierceness of heaven's retribution, or the fierceness of Yishiwen's method of crossing heaven's retribution, it made him speechless. He never thought that there could be such a brutal way of crossing heaven's retribution. It was simply to the point of scaring people to death. Most people who encountered this kind of variant heaven's retribution could only pray that they could survive. Yishiwen was indeed the first one who trampled on heaven's retribution so brutally. Moreover, he was keenly aware that Yishiwen would absorb a large amount of thunder and lightning energy every time he stepped on this fierce dragon. And Yishiwen would absorb all of it in one breath. Boom! 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 Every time Yishiwen stepped through the body of the divine dragon, he could absorb a lot of energy. His cultivation was also improving little by little. This divine dragon under his feet had no room to resist at all. No one knew how much time had passed. Yishiwen just kept on kicking the divine dragon down like this. Finally, the divine dragon, which was originally the size of a small mountain, was reduced to the height of a person. Yishiwen finally stopped kicking it away. Instead, he directly grabbed this divine dragon in his hand. Boom! This divine dragon was directly grabbed and exploded on the spot. It turned into a lightning storm that filled the sky. Then, Yishiwen opened his mouth and directly swallowed it. Boom! In Yishiwen's body, a huge amount of energy directly spewed out from the pores. He stood in the void like a peerless god. He closed his eyes and digested the power of this divine dragon. At this time, heaven's retribution gradually subsided. The dark clouds also became lighter little by little. Yishiwen suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Want to leave now? Isn't it too late?" He directly spread out his big hand. It expanded with the wind and became bigger and bigger. Soon, it became as big as the sky. He directly absorbed all the tribulation clouds that filled the sky. In the tribulation clouds, the power of heaven's retribution struggled in it. It wanted to escape from Yishiwen's hand. However, Yishiwen didn't give him any chance at all. Golden divinities covered it, and then directly digested this terrifying power. In the distance, seeing that the tribulation clouds were taken away, Yi Fengnian clearly felt that the coercion on her body had all disappeared. She could not help but stare at Yi Shiwen in the void dumbfoundedly. This granduncle's method of crossing the retribution was not just ordinary ferocious. It was simply unheard of and unseen. He did not dare to imagine what kind of person could cross the retribution in this way. Although he did not know what kind of heaven's retribution Yi Shiwen was crossing, he could still feel that it was an incredible tribulation. And after devouring the energy of the tribulation clouds, the momentum on Yi Shiwen's body swept up like a huge storm, sweeping in all directions. Boom! On Yi Shiwen's body, it was like a terrible flood broke through the blockade of a dam. All of a sudden, everything collapsed with a loud bang and directly rushed to the next realm. Heaven's End Realm! He had finally stepped into the Heaven's End Realm. In order to enter this realm, he wasted a full 100 years. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. But the aura on his body continued to rise like there was no time to rest. He went from the initial Heaven's End Realm to the peak of the initial Heaven's End Realm. Then, his aura continued to rise, charging to the next realm. The foundation that he had accumulated for 100 years was finally going to explode in one day. Yi Shiwen closed his eyes to rest. The aura on his body continued to rise. In just a short while, it seemed like there was no obstruction at all as it broke through the barrier of the initial Heaven's End Realm. Intermediate Heaven's End Realm. One could pretty much say that he rose up from the ground without any obstruction. After entering the intermediate Heaven's End Realm, Yi Shiwen's aura was still charging to a higher level. It was like the breakthrough just now didn't cause any obstruction to him at all and didn't consume much energy. Not long after the intermediate Heaven's End Realm, he naturally reached the late Heaven's End Realm. Peak Heaven's End Realm. Pretty much all of a sudden, he reached the peak of Heaven's End Realm without any obstruction at all. But at this moment, Yi Shiwen had no intentions of calming down. That was because he wanted to charge into the King Division in one go. With 100 years of accumulation, he didn't find it difficult to charge into the peak of Heaven's End Realm. The true difficulty was how to step into the King Division of Heaven's End Realm. Only by stepping into the King Division could he truly step into the ranks of the top experts and have the ability to fight against Sun King, Jiuying Monster King, etc. Chapter 1723. He had already stepped into the peak of the Heaven Realm, but compared to those truly strong King Realm experts, there was still a huge gap. They were both at the peak of the Heaven Realm, but the King Realm experts were the true rulers. Only by reaching the King Realm could one say that they were invincible. That battle left a deep impression on him. Even if he wore a mecha and his combat strength was comparable to a peak Heaven Realm expert. But in the hands of the Jiuying Demon King, they couldn't even last one move. In front of a Heaven Realm Pinnacle expert, normal Heaven Realm Pinnacle experts were as laughable as toys. They weren't his match at all. It was like they weren't even on the same level. But normal peak Heaven Realm experts didn't have a chance to step into the King Realm. This was the mysterious realm before one broke into the next realm. Each King Realm expert could sweep a bunch of Celestial End Realm experts. These were the true experts of the King Realm, the truly strong experts. He became solemn and sat down cross-legged. In his mind, numerous martial path memories were awakening and surging into his brain. Hong! 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 Each loud explosion would bring with it a sky-covering aura that swept up. Yi Shiwen's strength was also increasing step by step. After stepping into the peak of the Heaven Realm, normal people wouldn't be able to continue improving. It was tantamount to trying to force a way out of a situation where one's strength was already at its peak. This was not something an ordinary person could do. The Mingxin ancient tree in his body shone brightly and covered his entire body, causing his aura to become more and more mysterious. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes after a long time had passed. It seemed as if he had entered into a mysterious realm. His aura had slowly climbed to the peak. He had finally digested the power that had been accumulated by the devil seed in his body for many years. King Realm, I've finally stepped into it. Joy appeared on Yishuan's face. Only by stepping into the King Realm could one say that one had the ability to fight with those top experts. After a full 3 days and 3 nights, Yishuan finally completely consolidated his realm. He restrained all of his aura, just like everyone else. He didn't look like a king-level expert at all. At most, he looked like an ordinary expert at the celestial realm. Granduncle! At this time, Yi Fengyun directly flew all the way from the distance. His face was full of excitement. He had finally seen Yishuan again after 100 years. Yishuan smiled faintly. He was in a good mood after getting rid of the big trouble in his body. Without the devil seed constantly absorbing his power, his progress would be much faster. Moreover, he wouldn't need to use a lot of power to suppress the development of the devil seed. It could be said that in the past, due to the demonic seed, his progress was much slower than it should have been. However, it was also because of this that his foundation was incomparably deep. Although he had spent over 100 years, he felt that it was still very worth it. During these 100 years, he had resolved the internal injuries in his body, allowing him to go into battle without any burden. I've let you worry for the past 100 years. Yishuan looked at Yi Fengyun and said with a smile. No, it's nothing. As long as Granduncle is fine, that's the best. Yi Fengyun said excitedly. All right, you can go back first. Yishuan said. I still have some things to deal with. When I'm done, I'll go back. For the past 100 years, he was still worried about the safety of true martial school. It was because the Abyss Demon Lord was too terrifying. It was far more tyrannical than him who had stepped into the King Realm. Even now, if he were to face the Abyssal Demon Lord, he probably wouldn't be of much use. However, looking at Yi Fengyun's appearance, he knew that the Abyss Devil Lord shouldn't have returned in the past 100 years. The true martial school was also safe. This made him feel a little strange while letting out a sigh of relief. With the strength of the Abyss Devil Lord, who could hurt him? What kind of person could make him not return to the true martial domain until now? Yi Fengyun looked at Yishuan excitedly. However, he also knew that some things should not be asked. It was already a very big surprise and miracle to see Yishuan reborn this time. When everyone thought that Yishuan was dead, it was already a big surprise to see Yishuan again at this time. Yishuan looked at Yi Fengyun. He had just been reborn, and there were still many things waiting for him to do. As he said, he looked at the star beast hidden in the void and said, Go, take me there. You only know how to order me around. Star Beast Avatar kept muttering, but it did not dare to disobey Yishuan's orders. His gigantic figure appeared in the void. This is the Star Beast. Yi Fengyun suddenly looked at the Star Beast in the void with great shock. Regarding the legend of the Star Beast, it could be said that he already knew about it when he entered true martial school. Especially now that he was also a high level of true martial school, it was very clear what kind of existence was suppressed in the alien battlefield. It just disappeared together with Yishuan later. It was just that the high level was also silent about this. It was just that they did not expect to see such a shocking scene. Not only did they see the Star Beast, but it was actually subdued by Yishuan. Immediately, his face became excited. This time, Yishuan solved the hidden danger of the Star Beast in one fell swoop. Yishuan had disappeared this time in order to solve the hidden danger of the true martial university. Only a small number of people in the true martial university knew about this matter. And he was one of the people who knew about it. He thought that Yishuan had already failed, or both sides were defeated. Who knew that he actually succeeded? He actually succeeded. Thinking of this, he was even more excited. With Yishuan and the protection of the Star Beast, the development of true martial school would be smooth sailing. At this time, Yishuan's figure had disappeared in the universe. Yishuan's expression was extremely solemn. For him, the real hidden danger was still the Abyss Demon Master, whether it was in the ancient Baron's continent or the true martial domain. Although he did not know why the Abyss Demon Master did not return in the past 100 years, He would not be at ease if he could not solve this hidden danger. With his strength, he was afraid that he would not be able to compete with the Abyss Demon Master in a short period of time. In that case, the only way was to find out the reason why the Abyss Demon Master was injured. This was the only method he knew that could restrain the Abyss Demon Master. Who was it that heavily injured the Abyss Demon Master back then? Who was it that made him not dare to stay at all? The Abyss Demon Master was only scared by Huang Wuji, who held the true martial stone sword? What was it that could do this? If he could master this power, he might be able to fight against, or even kill the Abyss Demon Master. Initially, he had no clue. However, the sword spirit of the true martial stone sword had given him a direction. That was the battlefield of the deities many tens of thousands of years ago. In this world, if there was an existence that could injure the Abyss Demon Master, it would be the battlefield of the deities. The twilight of the gods. The place where countless deities perished. According to the sword spirit, the strength of the Abyss Demon Master could be considered as the strongest group of people even in the distant past, before the world changed. Now, he could not think of anyone in the universe of the true martial domain who had the ability to injure the Abyss Demon Master. Something like a hidden senior was even more unreliable. Although it was only a possibility, there was no difference for Yishiwen. This was also his only clue. He did not know about the twilight of the gods and the place where the deities perished. However, the Star Beast knew about it. Its ancestor had personally witnessed the scene of that terrifying war. Through the bloodline inheritance, it had passed down the knowledge of that year. Therefore, this Star Beast knew everything. On the contrary, although Yishiwen's body had also integrated with the bloodline of the Star Beast, he did not receive any hint. Obviously, they were not the same ancestor of the Star Beast. The speed of the Star Beast was extremely fast. Among the stars, it could absorb the power of the stars to replenish itself. It rushed all the way to the depths of the universe. Yishiwen had been sitting cross-legged on the body of the Star Beast. He closed his eyes and continued to consolidate his realm. The realm of the King Division was a whole new realm for him. This Star Beast was extremely excited and kept roaring. It did not know how many years it had been suppressed. It was suppressed when it was in its prime. It was suppressed when it had just grown to its peak. It had been countless years since then. At this time, it had finally escaped from the cage. Naturally, its heart was extremely excited. With the characteristics of its race, it could travel thousands of miles in a flash in the starry sky. Even so, Yishiwen and the Star Beast had walked for more than 3 months in the void of the universe. It seemed like they had reached the end of the sky. Along the way, they had passed through more than a dozen worlds without stopping. If it was the Star Beast, it would definitely devour everything along the way. However, after being controlled by Yishiwen, it could not do as it pleased. Under such circumstances, Yishiwen finally arrived at a gloomy universe. As soon as Yishiwen entered the universe, he realized that this universe was extraordinary. If one were to say that only the transcendent realm and above laws were completely shattered in the outside world, then all the laws here were shattered. Chapter 1724. Generally speaking, when a world and a space-time were created, the laws would accompany it, and then be perfected little by little. Even if the space-time was shattered in a fierce battle, the laws were difficult to be broken. Moreover, even if there were some that could break the laws, they would quickly recover under the effect of higher-level nomological forces. In the true martial domain and other worlds, the laws of the transcendent realm and above were all broken and couldn't be repaired. It was already horrifying enough. In this world, it was even more chaotic and horrifying. As he looked around, he couldn't see any perfect laws. In this chaotic place, the laws comprehended by the celestial realm were completely useless, and it was impossible to use the power of laws to fight. This also showed the difference here. "Is this the place where the gods fought back then?" asked Yishiwen. "And yes. In the battle back then, the gods fell. It was really terrifying." Star Beast thought of that scene, and its huge body couldn't help but tremble. It was actually afraid. Star Beast, who had always been fearless, was actually afraid at this time. Even if it was a race that could challenge the Dragon Clan, there was still a huge gap when compared with the gods. It couldn't be calculated with reason at all. Yi Shiwen didn't know what the specific situation of that battle was, but he saw it through the bloodline inheritance. That was truly a battle that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It was so terrifying that it caused him to shudder with fear. It's really terrifying. Yi Shiwen jumped down from Star Beast's body. Countless qi emitted from his feet and lifted him into the air. The laws were broken here. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen could easily fly with the use of the flight law without consuming qi at all. Of course, if he wanted to use demon wings, it would still consume a lot of qi because it was no longer within the scope of the laws. In this place, if you want to fully exert your combat power, unless you have reached the legendary level of verbal law. Otherwise, anyone who comes here will have their combat power sharply reduced. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat fearful look. Just the situation that he had observed made his heart beat fast. The so-called verbal law meant that once a word was spoken, the laws would naturally be produced, or once a word was spoken, the laws would be distorted, making the flames cold, and so on. However, there weren't many who could reach this level in history. They all had a unified name, and that was God. Was this the battlefield of the gods? A place where laws and natural laws were shattered. How world-shaking was that? But at this time, since he was already here, there was no reason for him to retreat, even though there might be a terrifying existence that could severely injure an abyssal demon master. At this time, the star beast behind him had turned into a middle-aged man. His face was ferocious and incomparably fierce, but he could only obediently follow behind Yi Shiwen. "Let's go in and have a look," Yi Shiwen said. He transformed into a streamer and rushed into the battlefield. Star Beast looked at Yi Shiwen, and its eyes flickered a few times. It couldn't help but feel depressed. It naturally didn't want to go into the battlefield to die. The scene in its memory was too terrifying, but it had no other way. If something happened to Yi Shiwen, it would be hard to escape death even if it hid outside. At this time, it was being controlled by Yi Shiwen, and it couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. Thinking of this, it could only secretly look at Yi Shiwen with hatred, and then rushed in. Yi Shiwen walked all the way inside, and he became more and more frightened. There were some broken pieces floating in the void. Some were broken pieces of weapons, some were broken pieces of magic items. However, without exception, all of them exuded an eternally terrifying pressure. Any single one of them could cause the entire primordial era to go crazy. However, Yi Shiwen didn't dare to touch them at this time. He suspected that even if he had entered the king rank, if he really touched these weapon fragments, he might be seriously injured on the spot. He carefully passed through the place where the fragments of weapons and artifacts were floating in the air. These weapon and instrument fragments exuded eternal and powerful coercion. After hundreds of millions of years, it hadn't weakened a bit. This was the eternal power of the god-level instruments. It was these weapons and instrument fragments that were constantly exuding waves of terrifying coercion, hindering the self-repair of these laws. Yi Shiwen looked around. In the middle of this dark universe, there was a shockingly huge boundary. And in the boundary, countless talismans were shining with divine light, and they were constantly seeping out. Waves of terrifying coercion swept out like a storm. Yi Shiwen could only watch from afar. Even if a heaven realm expert was swept by these storms, he would instantly turn into a pile of powder. He couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. What kind of battlefield is this? Roar! 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 Yi Shiwen clearly heard countless terrifying roars from within the boundary. They were trying to penetrate the boundary and directly rush into the depths of Yi Shiwen's heart, shaking him into an idiot. It's really terrifying. What happened in the ancient war? And what is the name of the world that the demon realm and demon realm joined forces to invade? Yi Shiwen had countless questions in his heart, but at this time, he couldn't get any answers at all. Behind him, Star Beast had already caught up and said to him, "Yi Shiwen, no matter what, This place is already quite close to the battlefield of the gods. Inside that boundary is most likely the core of the battlefield. We can't get any closer. If we get too close, we may die. Maybe there are still living gods inside. Once we're targeted by those creatures, we're dead for sure. Star Beast never called Yishuan master, but Yishuan never cared about such trivial matters. The life and death of Star Beast were in his hands. Why would he care about such trivial matters? He suddenly shouted. In his body, a powerful force rushed out. A terrifying force crossed the void and poured into Yishuan's body. My apostle, you're finally here. Hurry up, I want to give you more power to help me break this damn boundary. A loud shout appeared in Yishuan's mind. It wanted to shake Yishuan into an idiot in an instant, and seize control of Yishuan's body. At the same time, the Mingxin ancient tree in Yishuan's body constantly spewed out colorful divine light, protecting Yishuan's mind. The huge tree trunk was constantly swaying. Each swaying seemed to conform to some kind of rule. It blocked this force outside Yishuan's sea of consciousness again and again. Who are you? Get out of here! Yishuan shouted coldly. He wanted to expel this power from his body. He was extremely shocked in his heart. He had almost lost his mind to this power. If the enlightening mind ancient tree hadn't woken up at the last moment, Yishuan might not have been able to escape from this calamity. My apostle, do you dare to disobey my orders? Immediately afterward, a more majestic voice appeared. It directly wanted to take over Yishuan's control. The majestic divine power was inviolable. At this time, Yishuan finally remembered. Could this be the deity who had signed a contract with him? That god had actually fallen in this place? He was extremely shocked in his heart. But no matter how shocked he was, he couldn't let this god take over his body. His contract with that god had long been replaced by Yemo. Therefore, he didn't need to listen to this god at all. Previously, he just wanted to get some benefits from it. And now, his life might be threatened. How could he sit back and do nothing? When he was about to shake this force out of his body and quickly leave this battlefield, he heard a young man's cold shout coming from the sky. You're still not willing? Immediately afterward, a shocking energy fell from the sky and suddenly landed not far in front of Yishuan. Then, Yishuan suddenly felt that the terrible force that poured into his body had completely dissipated in an instant. His whole body was completely drenched. It was as if he had been fished out of a lake. The situation just now was extremely dangerous. He might have been taken over if he had been a little bit more. How many years has it been? Finally, a second person has come. It's actually a god's messenger. Immediately afterward, the young man's voice came from the sky. In the void, a figure slowly appeared. It was a young man, but this man was dressed in a king's robe. He looked incomparably majestic, as if he was the ruler of the entire world. Yishuan felt as if his soul would fly away and scatter if he were to look at him. The young man glanced at Yishuan and said, Originally, I should have killed you as soon as you became a lackey of the gods. But your body actually has the sword intention of the Sun King. This is a little surprising. The young man didn't seem to care about what Yishuan was thinking. He just talked to himself. Then, he waved his palm and a sword intention suddenly flew out of Yishuan's body. It was peeled off and fell into the hands of the young king. That is... Yishuan looked at the sword intention. Many years had passed, and he had almost forgotten that this sword intention had saved him many times. It was none other than the sword intention that he had copied from the body of the old man who had transformed from the sword intention in the Devil Commander's tomb in the past. Later, as Yishuan became stronger and stronger, the role of this sword intention became less and less. He almost forgot about it. He didn't expect that it would save him again today. Chapter 1725. In the void of the universe, a huge figure like a mountain was flying in the sky. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a huge ferocious beast flying in the void. On the back of this ferocious beast, there were 3 figures standing tall and straight. What a rich spiritual aura! Granduncle, is this the ancient wilderness? On the back of this huge ferocious beast, a woman exclaimed. Beside her, there was a young man with an excited expression on his face. Yishuan was able to stand on the head of a star giant, but he was extremely shocked. Unknowingly, his thoughts turned to that day. He never expected that the person he met on that day in the deity's battlefield would be one of the 4 human kings of the human race, the first-generation King Taitsung. King Taitsung was the 3rd peerless king of the human race. Moreover, according to the rumors, King Taitsung was 1 step away from the emperor realm. He was known as the first king of the human race since ancient times. However, he mysteriously disappeared in his later years, almost causing the fall of the human race. King Taitsung, who suddenly disappeared, became an unsolved mystery for many people. When King Taitsung entered the imperial court, he could be said to be the #1 expert at that time. He was also known as the #1 king of the human race since ancient times. Such a powerful being had never appeared again after that brief appearance, and had become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the human race. Among the 28 noble families, the Yi family had always been close to King Taitsung. When King Taitsung rose, the ancestors of the Yi family were the first to express their support. Therefore, they received many benefits later on. Originally, they had the opportunity to grow and become one of the top existences in the noble families. However, after King Taitsung's fleeting appearance, he suddenly disappeared. Therefore, the Yi clan had the most records about King Taitsung. However, Yishuan had never expected that he would see King Taitsung in that battlefield. Moreover, he was still alive. If this news were to spread, the entire ancient wilderness would be shocked. King Taitsung was not only the #1 expert of the human race, but also the #1 expert of the entire ancient wilderness. Known as the existence closest to the emperor realm, it was undoubtedly great news for the human race to have such an expert overseeing the human race. With King Taitsung overseeing the human race, there was no need to be afraid of any demon invasion. However, Yishuan's face revealed a somewhat worried expression. Yishuan returned to the true martial school after the war. He spent some time with his parents, relatives, and friends. Then, he returned to the ancient barrens. This time, it was different from the previous time. Except for the Abyss Demon Lord who was still high up, he was not afraid of anyone. This time, he brought Yi Fengyun and Yi Xueli along, wanting to nurture the 2 of them. No matter if it was Yi Fengyun or Yi Xueli, they were all peerless geniuses, especially Yi Fengyun. She had already ascended to the transcendent realm within a short period of time. Such progress was even stronger than Yishuan in the past. Although Yi Xueli was only a great sage, her cultivation realm of great sage. That was why he wanted to nurture the 2 of them. This could be considered his second disciple. The first one was Leah, but at that time, they did not have the status of master and disciple. However, Yishuan really hoped that these 2 could grow up so that they could protect the true martial world even if he wasn't here in the future. They had just left the space channel. Yishueli was still fine. He was just a great sage. When he was in the true martial domain, he had not yet touched the transcendent realm's sky barrier. However, Yi Fengyun had already touched the transcendent realm's sky barrier. He faintly felt that there was a strong obstacle preventing him from successfully breaking through to the transcendent realm's 2nd level. If he didn't leave, then he would be the same as the other ancestors of the true martial school. He would never be able to cross this boundary. He could only accumulate martial power day after day. This was a kind of sorrow. However, Huang Wuji and the others had already taken root in the true martial world for too long. They couldn't leave. Therefore, Yishuan could only bring Yi Fengyun and Yi Xueli back to the ancient barrens. As soon as they came out, they immediately felt a dense spiritual energy rushing towards them. In the distance, a vast and boundless continent appeared in front of them. Both of them were extremely shocked in their hearts. This continent was much bigger than the entire true martial world. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. Ancient barons! Ancient barons! A murmur came from Yishuan's side. If one looked closely, they would discover that this young man turned out to be King Taitsung. King Taitsung stared blankly at the familiar world in front of him. So many years had passed, and he never expected that he would one day be able to return from that battlefield and return to this familiar world. Yi Fengyun and Yi Xueli were already used to the sudden appearance of this young man. During this period, this young man often appeared and disappeared. They couldn't detect it at all. However, seeing that Yishuan didn't have the slightest surprise, they were no longer surprised. According to Yishuan, this was a senior from a long time ago. Since he was a senior, his martial power was naturally far beyond the realm that they could understand. Naturally, there was nothing strange about it. I haven't seen you for many years. Ancient Barons has already undergone earth-shaking changes. Very good, very good. Back then, my clan didn't fall into the realm of slavery because of me. King Taitsung had a handsome face. He had the appearance of a young man, but his words were full of vicissitudes. If Senior hadn't suppressed that battlefield back then, I'm afraid that the ancient barons would have been slaughtered. No matter what, Senior has done a great favor to the human race and the ancient barons, Yishuan said. His tone was dull, but it revealed a kind of respect. No matter what King Taitsung had done in his life was worthy of his admiration. Now, the ancient barons is the world of you young people. I just did some things. It's nothing. The ones who truly protected the ancient barons and the survival of my clan are you, King Taitsung said with a smile. His smile was incomparably old. It's all thanks to you that I can come back this time. Back then, I didn't expect that a genius like you would appear in the Yi clan. His eyes were deep, as if he had seen through the river of time, and saw his incomparably glorious era. The Yi clan's clan lord was his right-hand man in those days. The star beast under his feet was extremely respectful. It was not as impatient as it was when it was under Yishuan's command. At your age, you have already entered the stage of king grade. You can already be regarded as a genius. Even in my era, you were already a peerless genius. However, if you want to break through and enter the next realm, you still need to understand one thing. The mystery of life and death is the key to breaking through the next realm. If you can understand the yin-yang life and death diagram in your body, there is a possibility of breaking through to the next realm. King Taitsung inadvertently pointed out. Thank you, Senior, for your guidance. Yishuan's face also showed a somewhat grateful expression. Then, King Taitsung stepped on the star beast under his feet and said, Although I can see that you are not very willing, but if you can sincerely assist Yishuan, the day he achieves Tao in the future will be the day of your success. Do you understand? Understood. The star beast under his feet said in a muffled voice, not daring to be disrespectful at all. However, at this time, the star beast's pace was extremely fast. In just an instant, it had already arrived at the border of the ancient Baron's continent, the border gate. In order to not scare anyone, the star beast directly shrank its figure, and turned into a size of only 10 meters. Although it was still huge, it was no longer that big. In the ancient barons, the truly huge vicious beasts were not known to be thousands of meters long. They were incomparably huge. However, Yishuan discovered a problem all of a sudden. The originally flourishing border gate was now empty. It was deathly silent. This wasn't caused by the passing of the Abyss Devil Lord last time. Even if the border gate couldn't restore its former glory and prosperity in the last 100 years, it shouldn't be in such a state of deathly stillness. Yishuan's divine senses swept out, and he could see broken buildings everywhere. It was obvious that the destruction was not too long ago. It should not be more than 50 years ago. It was definitely not caused by the Abyss Demon Lord. What's going on? Yi Fengyun and King Taitsung looked at the empty border gate in shock. This was completely different from the prosperous ancient Baron's continent that they had imagined. In their imagination, the ancient Baron's continent should be extremely prosperous, an existence that was 100 or 1,000 times more prosperous than the true martial domain. Yishuan had mentioned this before. However, what were they seeing now? Everywhere was an incomparably dilapidated scene. It had nothing to do with the extremely prosperous scene that they had imagined. "This is clearly cleaned up by someone," said Yishuan with a frown. King Tai-tsung, who was beside him, had already become solemn. "Hee, I've met a few more humans. Haha, from time to time, I would meet humans who had ascended from various small worlds. I can capture them all and make them my slaves." Suddenly, a strange laughter came from the void. It was a middle-aged man with 2 long golden horns on his head. He was only in the law manifestation realm, but he was extremely arrogant. When he looked at Yishuan and the others, his face was filled with incomparable greed, as if he had seen incomparable wealth. "I advise you to hand over all your savings obediently and become my slaves. You should be glad that you didn't meet the demon clan or the demon clan. Otherwise, you wouldn't just be slaves. You would be eaten." The middle-aged man kept talking to himself. As he spoke, he directly clawed at Yishuan and the others. "Impudent!" Yishuan snorted coldly. He took a step forward and slapped. "Pun!" The middle-aged man was sent flying by the slap, and blood splattered in the void. Chapter 1726. "Who do you think you are? How dare you hunt humans? I think you must be tired of living," Yishuan sneered. "You!" At this moment, this person finally knew that he seemed to have kicked an iron plate. He was extremely shocked. How is this possible? The humans that ascended from various small worlds would at most be in the transcendent realm. Even if they were stronger, it would be fine if there were 1 or 2 law manifestation realm experts. How could he be so powerful? He actually sent me flying with just a slap. This was another human powerhouse. In the current world, such people were hard to find. Yishuan took a step forward. He spread out his hand and suddenly grabbed the warrior's neck. Then, he said directly, "People of the 100 Clan Alliance. Although this area is indeed the border between the Human Clan and the 100 Clan Alliance, if I remember correctly, this should be the Human Clan's territory. How dare you hunt humans here? Are you tired of living?" Yishueli, who was at the side, was not afraid when she saw Yishuan's expression. On the contrary, her face was flushed with excitement. It was so satisfying. From what this guy said just now, he actually wanted to hunt the Human Clan. How could she not be angry? "Senior, this is a misunderstanding. It's really a misunderstanding." The 100 Clan Alliance warrior's neck was firmly grasped by Yishuan. He couldn't exert any strength at all. How could he not admit defeat at this time? "Misunderstanding? I'd like to see what kind of misunderstanding there is." Yishuan sneered. "We didn't do this here. Perhaps Senior has been living in seclusion in the small world for too long. You don't know that this place was actually completely destroyed more than 20 years ago. Over these years, after the Human Clan royal court was breached by the Demon Clan, it has long been holed up in Mount Chi," said the 100 Clan Alliance warrior while trembling. "Nonsense! How is this possible? How can the royal court be breached?" said Yishuan in disbelief. Even King Tai-tsung's eyes instantly burst with a terrifying radiance. Imperial Court, for the Human Clan in remote antiquity, what did Imperial Court mean? It was simply indescribable. However, ever since Sun King established Imperial Court had never been breached, no matter how great the Human Clan's crisis was, including the last time when the Demon Clan invaded. Even a powerful existence like the Abyssal Demon King couldn't do anything to the royal court. The battle could only end in a stalemate. How could the royal court be breached? "Senior!" The 100 Races Alliance martial artist instantly felt 2 frightening auras crushing down upon him as if they were about to crush him to death. "What I said is true. 30 years ago, the Abyssal Demon Lord personally took action. Later on, the Wang family of the human race's noble clan rebelled and joined the Abyssal Demon Lord. They personally opened up the royal court's defensive line. On that day, the royal court was breached and collapsed 1,000 miles away. At that time, countless human experts in the royal court died in battle, not a single one was able to escape. The martial artist of the 100 Races Alliance spoke with increasing difficulty. What? King Taitsung was incomparably shocked. He had just returned to the ancient desolate era, and the first thing he heard was that the king's court had been breached. What about the Yi family? Yi Shiwen immediately asked. I'm not sure either, but they should all be dead. At that time, in the royal court, except for the Wang family, almost everyone else was killed in battle. All these years, under the encirclement of the demon race army, only the 4 royal clans were able to barely hold on. More than half of the other noble clans have been destroyed. Senior, what I said is true. You must believe me. That's all I know. I just wanted to capture some human slaves to sell. The demon race and demon race are far more ferocious than we are. Almost all the humans that fell into their hands became their food. On the day that the royal court was breached, the sea race also began to massacre the human forces in the sea region. Blood flowed like a river, and there were countless casualties. In order to absolve himself of his crime, he had already said everything. He had even specifically mentioned the crimes of the other clans in order to reduce his own crime. Good, very good. King Taitsung was already extremely angry at this time. His face was already pale. If that's the case, then go to hell. Yi Shiwen did not have the slightest intention of letting him go. Before him, who knew how many young talents of the human race had been captured by this guy and sold as slaves? He deserved it. Even death was not to be regretted. You can't go back on your words. You will have retribution. Retribution. Right now, there are countless people waiting to kill the human race in the desolate era. You will definitely have retribution. The martial artist of the 100 Races Alliance kept roaring and roaring as he struggled. But how could he keep up with Yi Shiwen? He directly stepped out with 1 foot on the spot, and the warrior of the 100 Clan Alliance in the Law Phase realm was directly crushed into pieces. Blood splattered everywhere, and he died on the spot. I'd like to see how many people are waiting to kill the human race, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. How did it become like this? Yi Shiwen was incomparably shocked. 100 years, in just 100 years, things had turned out like this. The imperial court had been breached, and the human race, which was originally one of the major races, had been reduced to blood, food, and slaves. Could it be that the tragic years of the human race in ancient times were going to repeat themselves? Damn the Wang clan! Yi Shiwen angrily rebuked. He had just captured a key piece of information, and that was that the Wang clan had opened the royal court's defense line, which allowed the devil race army to march straight in, and finally successfully breach the royal court. He had never been so angry before. Although he had a grudge with the Wang clan, he had never thought that the Wang clan would actually do such a thing. What a bunch of evildoers! King Taitsung said angrily. I didn't expect the Wang clan to have such a vile descendant. How many of their ancestors fought for the rise of the human race, but in the end, such a vile descendant appeared among their descendants. When a king was angry, the sky and earth changed color. In an instant, countless chilly winds blew between heaven and earth, whistling over. Yi Fengyun and Yi Xioli finally understood at this time why Yi Shiwen was so respectful to King Taitsung. This terrifying strength was simply unheard of and unseen. Let's go. I'd like to see how many people are still waiting to hunt down our human race. At this time, King Taitsung directly strode out, undoubtedly revealing his kingly demeanor. He had not revealed his strength all along, just like an ordinary teenager. Once he attacked, his strength was extremely terrifying. Wherever King Taitsung passed, the experts of the 100 Clan Alliance and the demon race who were waiting to hunt down the human race near the border immediately self-destructed on the spot. They did not even have the time to react to what was going on. Yi Shiwen and the others followed behind one after another. This movement immediately alarmed countless people in the distance. This was not the only number of experts wandering around this area. These people did not recognize King Taitsung in person, but they could recognize Yi Shiwen. Who is that? Why do I feel like I've seen that man somewhere before? I also have a feeling of déjà vu. Could it be that I've seen him somewhere before? Where did such a fierce and invincible human come from? Could it be the monstrous genius of the Yi clan from more than 100 years ago, Yi Shiwen? Unbelievable. It's really him. I almost thought that I was mistaken. Back then, he was injured by the Jueying Demon King and the Abyss Devil Lord. After that, he did not appear for more than 100 years. Wasn't it said that he had fallen? That's right. It's him. Back then, his strength was extremely tyrannical, and he was invincible among his peers. Even the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm was defeated by him. For a moment, everyone was shocked. At first, no one remembered him. After all, not to mention the glory of the human race in the past, it was extremely difficult for them to even protect themselves. Reality was cruel. Seeing that the human race was on the verge of decline, who would still remember the outstanding genius of the human race back then? However, when they really remembered him from their dusty memories, it was like a hurricane that swept across the entire battlefield. Back then, many people sighed for Yi Shiwen's fall. It was such a pity that such a person had fallen just like that. Everyone could see that colluding with the demon race was just an excuse. The real reason was the sacrifice that the human race had made to form an alliance with the other races. At that time, it had indeed facilitated the alliance of several major races. However, when the human royal court was breached, and a massive number of experts died tragically, the demon world's passageways that were suppressed by the various aristocratic families were also breached. A large number of demon race swarmed in, and countless humans were slaughtered. When the other races saw that the human race no longer had any value, they immediately tore up the agreement. Not only did they not fulfill their responsibilities as allies, but they also continued to hit the human race while they were down, encroaching on the human race's territory. After a few decades, the human race seemed to have fallen completely. The elites that dominated the world back then had all fallen overnight. They had directly shed all pretenses of cordiality. Between the various races, the so-called alliance didn't exist at all. Only with great strength could one guarantee the implementation. Granduncle is so powerful. Even in the ancient Baron's continent where there are so many experts, so many people know of him. Yi Xueli looked at Yi Shiwen with some admiration. To her, everything in the ancient Baron's continent was still so novel and magical. It was simply like a place from the legends. Just like the guy that Yi Shiwen casually killed just now. He was much stronger than the strongest expert in her memory, Granduncle Huang Wuji. When the surrounding voices fell into her ears, she was filled with admiration. Yi Xueli was incomparably shocked. How could Yi Fengyan not be the same? She was filled with passion. More than 200 years ago, her granduncle also came to the ancient barons like this. However, more than 200 years later, he had already become a famous figure in the ancient barons. Without coming to the ancient barons, it was impossible to imagine how great Yi Shiwen's reputation was. Even after more than 200 years, it was still imprinted in the hearts of the people. Chapter 1727. It's only been over 100 years, but he seems to be even stronger than before. Could he have already entered the celestial realm? No, he was already able to kill celestial realm experts over 100 years ago. Many people began to discuss. However, the news of Yi Shiwen's return also began to spread throughout the ancient wilderness at a shocking speed. Some people hated him to the core, while others were extremely surprised by his return. This news immediately began to spread in the ancient wilderness. Although it was nothing to the overall situation of the ancient wilderness, for some people, Yi Shiwen's return was undoubtedly an earth-shattering event. Especially many people who had a grudge against Yi Shiwen. At this time, their expressions turned serious. There were also some experts from other clans who wanted to kill the human race. They couldn't bear to see such a talent return. Back then, Yi Shiwen was already very strong. Even celestial realm experts were no match for him. Now, he was definitely much stronger than he was 100 years ago. The return of such a person might not be a good thing for the various clans. But soon, some other rumors came out. They said that Yi Shiwen's martial power wasn't as tyrannical as it used to be. He had disappeared for hundreds of years. He had been seriously injured by the Jiuying Demon King and the Abyss Devil Master. It was good enough that he had survived. Not to mention, his martial power had improved. He was definitely not as strong as many people thought he was. However, Yi Shiwen's return had still attracted the attention of many people. It didn't matter whether he had the same martial power as back then, or whether he had made further progress. His existence was already a huge threat. Especially those who had besieged him back then. At this time, they even began to take action. In the north of the ancient wilderness, on a huge mountain peak, there were many tents. It was a place where the demon race had stationed their troops. And in this tent, in the most luxurious one, a person sat on a throne in the tent. Countless auras gathered around him, turning into laws. Clearly, he had comprehended the laws to an extremely profound level. This was a young man in a royal robe. He suddenly opened his eyes, which were like two beams of light that shot straight into the sky. That Yi Shiwen actually dared to return? He was incomparably cold, and his expression did not change at all. Your Highness, that's right, it's Yi Shiwen. Our 9-headed infant tribe's spies have already confirmed it. That Yi Shiwen swaggered in without any disguise. It's been confirmed. At this time, a voice beside him said, How strong is it? Did you find out? The young man in the royal robe continued. I don't know, the various powers are all watching. An initial celestial realm expert attacked and was easily crushed by him. Even if his strength didn't improve during these 100 years, it shouldn't have regressed much. That voice continued. Good, very good. The young man sneered and said, Should we report this to the king? The voice asked. There's no need. He's just a cripple from 100 years ago. If he's really fine, then there's no need to spend 100 years. So what if he's improved again? The youth in the royal robes sneered. Other people might not be clear about the situation that year, but how could our 9-headed infant race not know? He could kill a peak celestial realm expert not because of his own strength, but because of a weird artifact. That artifact was destroyed by the Abyss Demon Lord. What is he now? In 100 years, how much can he improve? Even if he is at peak celestial realm, I can easily crush him to death. The young man in the royal robe said in disdain. The young man in the royal robe said disdainfully, There are no heroes in this era, that's why people become famous. This guy only has an undeserved reputation. Some ignorant people actually praised him as the #1 person in the younger generation. Humph, he's just a cripple from 100 years ago. I'll let everyone know that the person who is truly worthy of being the #1 person in the younger generation is none other than me. Back then, he didn't meet me, otherwise he'd be dead. However, it's not too late now. It's time to correct a wrong saying that has spread for 100 years. The young man's face was filled with fighting spirit. That year, Yi Shiwen displayed shocking strength. Most of the young generation were only at initial and middle celestial realm. At most, there were a few who were at late celestial realm, but he could already destroy peak celestial realm experts. Although he fled in defeat and no one knew if he was dead or alive, to many people, this was enough to prove that he was the top of the young generation. Even after hundreds of years, the younger generation had already stepped into extremely profound realms. Even the older generation wasn't a match for them. However, there was still some truth to this statement. There were still some people who firmly believed that Yi Shiwen wasn't that simple. However, how many of the young generation were willing to accept this? Why did Yi Shiwen have to be above them? That was a matter from 100 years ago. However, that battle back then had been a disgrace for many kings. So many experts had let Yi Shiwen escape in the end. So, this matter had become a taboo for them. So many people in the outside world weren't very clear about it, and those who knew the truth were even more unconvinced. Back then, He was just a person who hadn't even reached celestial realm. What qualifications did he have to be above them? If I don't kill this guy, there's no need to alarm Father about this matter. Father now has to contact the various clans about the alliance, and he also has to face the demon clan's pressure step by step. Let me handle this kind of trivial matter. Now the decline of the human race is a foregone conclusion. Without the human race at the forefront, we have to bear the brunt of the demon clan's iron cavalry. When I leave, the matters in this military camp will be handed over to you, he said indifferently. Before his voice fell, his figure had already disappeared into the air. He didn't die 100 years ago. Now let me kill him. In the encampment of the North Mountain clan, hearing the news of Yishiwen's return, Yishiwen, who had been almost forgotten, suddenly entered the hearts of the North Mountain clan at this time. Many of the younger generation clamored to kill him. Back then, Yishiwen directly killed the patriarch of the North Mountain clan. Although he was only a puppet, he was still the patriarch of the North Mountain clan after all. At that time, the human race was still very powerful, so no one could do anything to Yishiwen. But now, the human race had declined. Let's see who can still protect Yishiwen. And under such circumstances, a young war god of the North Mountain clan seized this opportunity to kill Yishiwen. For some people, Yishiwen was the strongest of the younger generation in their hearts. If they couldn't kill Yishiwen, they couldn't change the impression in these people's hearts. In other words, this was also a battle to compete for the strongest. Even if it was a siege to kill Yishiwen, only the strongest was qualified to participate. Other trash was not qualified to participate at all. Beishan Yu, the newly rising peerless genius of the North Mountain clan. Although he debuted much later than Yishiwen and the others, he rose rapidly in a short period of time, defeating countless masters of the younger generation of the North Mountain clan. Now, he was the strongest of the younger generation of the North Mountain clan. Yishiwen of the human clan is back? In the royal court, a strong Azura suddenly opened his eyes and stood up from the endless demonic flames. This kind of demonic flame was originally used by the demon clan to torture prisoners. No matter what kind of person, under the burning of this kind of demonic flame, it was impossible to persevere. But this Azura actually used this kind of demonic flame as a means to train his physical body. One could imagine how powerful it was. I have heard of the name Yishiwen a long time ago. Now if even he dies in the hands of our demon clan, let's see how many humans still have the heart to resist. As he spoke, he stepped out gracefully and disappeared into the void. Not only this Azura powerhouse, but many powerhouses in the demon clan were suddenly alarmed because everyone knew that Yishiwen had the yin-yang life and death diagram on him. This was a fragment of a magic tool that the Abyss Demon Lord had always wanted. Once he obtained the yin-yang life and death diagram, the Abyss Demon Lord's strength would advance by leaps and bounds, and there would be a huge change. This was the thought of those who were loyal to the Abyss Demon Lord. There were also some people who were not loyal to the Abyss Demon Lord, but they also coveted the yin-yang life and death diagram on Yishiwen's body. This was a magic tool that even the Abyss Demon Lord coveted. If they could also obtain it, then it was possible for them to leap to the level of the Abyss Demon Lord. All kinds of ambitious people were breeding. Yishiwen had just appeared, and it immediately caused a commotion in the entire demon clan. Even if the Abyss Demon Lord had not spoken, they had already moved one after another. In the Qi Mountain, a beautiful place with mountains and rivers had already been condensed by the chilling atmosphere. The brows of a tall and sturdy man suddenly became solemn. Yishiwen is back? That's great, someone wants to touch him? Daring to touch my brother, I think they are tired of living. It just so happens that I want to see how powerful the heavens' prides of other clans are. Do they really think that after our human clan suffered heavy losses, there is not a single person left? This tall and strong man was Yi Fan. After he was accepted as a disciple by the mysterious ancestor of the Yi clan, he had been in a state of closed-door training, tempering himself. If it was not because of the heavy losses of the Yi clan's powerhouses, he might still be in closed-door training. However, compared to hundreds of years ago, his strength was already very different from before. Yi Fan snorted coldly, and directly stepped into a light and disappeared into the sky. Chapter 1728. The entire ancient barons was in an uproar because of Yi Shiwen's return. In the eyes of many people, his return was the top priority. Several large clans that could dominate the entire ancient barons were mobilized because of Yi Shiwen. Many people were rushing towards Yi Shiwen from all directions. Yi Shiwen didn't care about them. On the contrary, he slowed down as if he was waiting for those people to arrive. He killed along the way. The situation of the entire ancient barons' continent was much worse than he had expected. The human race occupied the most central area of the entire ancient barons, and the heartland of the human race was the Qi Mountain region. With the collapse of the royal court, countless individual cultivator forces were uprooted. Many marquis clans were uprooted as well. In the current ancient barons, apart from some territories of the various marquis clans, only the Qi Mountain region had become the greatest protection of the human race due to the existence of several forces. It was also the last territory of the human race. It was also the last area where the demon race was besieging. The human race had taken root in this land for many years. In just a few decades, although the major forces had been defeated, it didn't mean that the human race no longer existed in the human race's territory. On the contrary, there were still many humans living in the human race's territory, struggling to survive. Not all forces had the ability to travel thousands of miles to the Qi Mountain region. Most of the forces were either annihilated or stayed behind to defend. In the past few decades, the human race's casualties were estimated to be more than half. However, they were still stubbornly surviving. Back then, the human race had an uncountable number of hundreds of millions of people. Now, more than half of them had been lost. One could imagine how much they had lost in the past few decades. The foundation of the human race was among these ordinary people. The future of the human race was also among these ordinary people. Therefore, they had been killing along the way. Be it the Oceanids, the Hundred Races Alliance, the demons, or the demons, anyone who wreaked havoc in human territory was killed. Along the way, blood flowed like a river. These alien races were used to being arrogant in the human race territory. At this time, the human race was unable to block the final attack of the demon race, so they could only let them do what they wanted. Who knew that they would be ambushed at this time? No matter how many people there were, how strong the opponents were, even the celestial realm old ancestor was slapped to death. None of them were able to escape. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen's speed had suddenly dropped a lot, and he was quickly overtaken by those people with ulterior motives. The first to arrive was none other than the eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King. This tyrannical young expert crossed the sky, bringing with him a rumbling sound, like a thunderclap exploding. He brought with him a murderous aura that filled the sky, forming layers of murderous clouds in the sky. The murderous aura was monstrous and ominous. This murderous aura turned into an unparalleled pressure, directly crushing Yi Shiwen and the others. However, it was of no use. Although Yi Fengyun and Yi Xueli's cultivation was still very low, with the star beast blocking the pressure, it did not affect them at all. Yi Shiwen, you were lucky to escape last time. Today, you won't be able to escape. The eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King sneered and said, After today, everyone will know that I can only be the number one person in the younger generation, and you are just a joke. In the face of the provocation of the eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King, Yi Shiwen did not move. The eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King came alone, showing his absolute strength. In terms of strength, he had probably already entered the peak of the celestial realm. With such strength, unless he met the masters of the major forces or masters of the king grade, it was indeed difficult to meet an opponent. Seeing that Yi Shiwen ignored him, the eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King could not help but sneer. He directly broke through the sky with his spear, instantly shattering the void, and directly piercing Yi Shiwen's head. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally moved. He directly spread out his hand, and his palm met the sky full of spear radiance. Dang! A loud bang sounded, and terrifying power instantly splashed out from the point of collision, and the void was forcibly pierced. Countless people in the distance sucked in a cold breath. Yi Shiwen and the others were so high profile that they had long attracted the attention of countless people. Although these people did not dare to casually approach, even looking from afar, they still felt extremely shocked. The eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King attacked with all his strength, shaking the entire universe, but still could not break through Yi Shiwen's palm. Right now, among the clans that slaughtered the most humans, the Jiuying clan is also one of them, Yi Shiwen said expressionlessly. So what if I am? Do you still think that the human race is still the big clan that it was many years ago? The eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King said disdainfully, not taking Yi Shiwen seriously at all. The strength of the eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King was extremely terrifying. Instantly, a sky full of spear radiance shot out from his spear. It was unbelievably fast, and this long spear was already at the level of an ultimate weapon. It was indeed very difficult to find a worthy opponent among the same generation, but unfortunately, he met Yi Shiwen. Compared to when Yi Shiwen had just entered the ancient Baron's continent, it was much better. As the saying goes, the predecessor planted the tree, and the posterity enjoyed the shade. After absorbing this blood essence, Yi Fengyun broke through all the way to the Transcendent Realm 3rd level. This was to prevent the unstable foundation from breaking through continuously. Otherwise, she could even rush all the way to the Transcendent Realm 9th level. If it was Huang Wuji, with his deep foundation, he could definitely rush all the way to the Transcendent Realm 9th level without worrying about the unstable foundation. Although Yi Xueli was not as exaggerated as Yi Fengyun, she had already broken through all the way to the Great Sage Realm Great Perfection and even attracted the Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution directly. Originally, for the Great Sage Realm warriors, the Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution was the most terrifying Heaven's Retribution. The Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution meant that this creature bid farewell to the mortal world. From then on, it transcended the mortal world. Its body would become the most perfect, and its lifespan would be greatly extended. Therefore, this Heaven's Retribution was very difficult to pass. However, with Yi Shiwen guarding by the side, these were naturally not a problem. After just half a day, she had completely passed the Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution. She directly stepped into the Transcendent Realm. After Yi Xueli had passed through the Transcendent Realm's Heaven's Retribution, the next wave of people had arrived. This wave consisted of experts from the 100 Clan Alliance, led by a young expert with a dignified appearance. His aura was sharp, just like an unsheathed sword. Compared to the 9-headed fierce beast king, he was not inferior at all. It was Beishan Yu, the strongest among the younger generation of the Beishan clan. In a short period of time, he was able to defeat many seniors as a junior. His talent naturally went without saying. A large number of Heaven Realm experts followed Beishan Yu. There were experts from various clans in the 100 Clan Alliance. A large number of people surrounded Yi Shiwen and the others. Chapter 1729. These were all experts above the celestial realm, and they were all leaders of the major forces. But at this time, they were all gathered together just to besiege Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, you murderous demon king, you have killed so many geniuses of our North Mountain clan. Today, it is time for you to pay with your blood. Beishan Yu roared. I want to see how many geniuses your North Mountain clan has for me to kill. Yi Shiwen sneered. As he spoke, Yi Shiwen had already rushed directly into these figures, leaving only an afterimage. He rushed in single-handedly, ferocious like a thunderbolt, and slammed his palm directly towards Beishan Yu. How dare you! Arrogant! You actually dare to use one person to charge at so many of us. No matter how strong your cultivation is, you have to die. I want to see how you die. These people saw Yi Shiwen suddenly rush in, and they couldn't help but be startled, but then they all began to curse. Yi Shiwen actually dared to rush in, he was simply not putting them in his eyes. Pun! Before they finished speaking, a celestial realm expert of the 100 Races Alliance was directly pierced by Yi Shiwen's hand, and his entire spirit was instantly crushed. Clean and crisp, cold and merciless. Only then did everyone finally react, and they all began to pounce towards him. In an instant, dozens of terrifying attacks directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen, wanting to directly kill him. Yi Shiwen was like a dragonfly skimming the water. A large hand swept out a sky full of golden light, instantly sweeping away all these attacks. Pun! Everyone's eyes blurred, and another celestial realm expert's head was directly blown up by Yi Shiwen. Blood splattered everywhere, and he had no strength to fight back. The entire world was silent, extremely quiet, deathly silent. Everyone was stunned. Yi Shiwen easily blew up 2 celestial realm experts in succession. Everyone seemed to have seen a ghost. Some people might have gotten the news that Yi Shiwen had killed celestial realm experts on the way here, but the battle report didn't mention in detail how he killed them. That was why these celestial realm experts dared to come together. In their opinion, with so many people, no matter how arrogant Yi Shiwen was, it was useless. However, he didn't expect that he wouldn't even be able to withstand a single move from Yi Shiwen. All eyes were suddenly fixed on Yi Shiwen. How long has it been since we last met? How did he become so strong? Everyone's mind was like a clap of thunder, rumbling incessantly. Everyone found that they seemed to have underestimated Yi Shiwen. At this moment, they seemed to recall Yi Shiwen's reputation from before. He was extremely ruthless, and they also wanted to retreat in their hearts. In just 2 moves, 2 Heaven Realm experts fell. This was just too terrifying, and it sent chills down one's spine. Yi Shiwen's body stood tall in the void like a deity overlooking the world. Bang! With a casual attack, with a raise of his hand or a kick, a Heaven Realm expert would be blown up. There were people from all races in the 100 Clan Alliance, but they were all the same. They were no match for Yi Shiwen at all. In just a moment, several Heaven Realm experts had been killed. And at this time, Beishan finally couldn't hold back and made a move. He blasted out a 5-colored divine light, sweeping up endless fist energy. It twisted and blasted towards the back of Yi Shiwen's head with lightning speed. He took the initiative to attack, taking advantage of Yi Shiwen killing a Heaven Realm expert to directly attack. Yi Shiwen didn't even look. A pair of demon wings spread out behind him, instantly protecting him. Boom! Yi Shiwen's demon wings emitted an incomparably loud rumbling sound. Then, a 5-colored divine radiance splashed out from his demon wings, and countless rays of divine radiance splashed out. Immediately after, Yi Shiwen turned around and blasted Beishan with a punch. He was like a piece of paper, not a match for Yi Shiwen at all. The gap between an ordinary peak Heaven Realm expert and a King rank expert was so huge. It was like heaven and earth. Only when Yi Shiwen truly stepped into the King rank of the peak Heaven Realm expert could he truly feel the gap. At the start, he couldn't understand why there would be such a huge gap when they were both at the peak of Celestial Being Realm. That was a terrifying existence that could reign supreme in this realm. Someone who was invincible and just a little bit away from stepping into the next realm. Beishan couldn't dodge at all, and blood splattered everywhere. Apart from him, the other experts of the 100 Clan Alliance were also slaughtered in a moment. Although some people saw that the situation was not good and wanted to retreat, how could they keep up with Yi Shiwen's speed? They couldn't escape at all. Yi Shiwen caught up to them in an instant and slaughtered them all. Finally, Yi Shiwen's ferocious prowess completely alarmed the entire remote antiquity. Among the people he killed, there was no lack of Beishan, the Jiuying Demon King First Prince, who had already stepped into the peak of the Celestial Realm and had hopes of stepping into the King rank in the future, was no match for Yi Shiwen at all. He was directly killed by a single punch. Many people guessed that he had already stepped into the King rank. Otherwise, how could he be so terrifying? Such a rumor quickly stunned many people. Many people who originally wanted to find trouble with Yishiwen suddenly stopped in their tracks. They considered whether they had such strength. Regardless of whether he had the strength of the king rank or not, from the situation of several consecutive battles, even a peak heaven realm expert would not be a match for him. Therefore, to be a match for him, one could only be a master at the king rank. There was no doubt about this. And the experts who had not reached the king rank, at this time, all suddenly became well-behaved. Although they wanted to kill Yishiwen, they were not fools. How could they not know the severity of the situation? Even those who were originally clamoring to kill Yishiwen suddenly quieted down at this time. However, everyone's eyes were on the king rank experts. Everyone was thinking when these king rank experts would kill Yishiwen. However, those monarch division experts could be said to be 1 in 1,000, and their numbers were limited. Now that the ancient Baron's continent was in a state of chaos, and several major clans were clashing intensely, these monarch division experts were all stationed in one place. In their eyes, killing Yishiwen was just a trivial matter. Therefore, some people guessed that there might not be any king rank experts who would take action. And those king rank experts who had a grudge with Yishiwen were either dead or injured. Otherwise, if something happened, who would take action? However, at this time, Yishiwen, who was originally regarded as prey, announced to the world at this time, passing on King Taitsung's decree. All foreign races that entered the human territory must leave within 10 days, or else they would be killed without mercy. For a moment, the world was shocked. Chapter 1730. Yishiwen's words shocked the entire world. Who was King Taitsung? This point wasn't limited to the ancient Baron's continent. Even the ancient Phoenix domain and the demon race were very clear about this point. As the number 1 king of the human race in the past, he was known as an existence that was half a step away from becoming a martial emperor. He possessed extremely terrifying strength. Back then, he could be said to be invincible among his peers. If it wasn't for his sudden disappearance, many people believed that he might be the first martial emperor of the human race. However, that was something that happened a long, long time ago. Many people had their own guesses about King Taitsung's whereabouts. Some said that he had ascended to a higher realm, while others said that he had passed away. But no matter what, it had been countless years. Even if he did not die back then, he should be dead by now. Now, Yishiwen had passed down King Taitsung's decree and requested all the races to retreat. How could this not cause a huge commotion? If King Taitsung was truly reborn, these foreign races might be jumping around happily now. However, if the news was confirmed to be true, they would immediately run away as far as they could. King Taitsung was a bright star in the distant era. Even in that chaotic era, no one could overshadow his brilliance. However, it was only Yishiwen's decree. No one had confirmed it. Therefore, many people didn't believe it at all. If King Taitsung was still alive, how could he watch the demon race wreak havoc? How could he watch the Abyss Demon Lord destroy the Imperial Court without doing anything? One should know that although the Abyss Demon Lord was powerful and almost unbeatable in the current era, he was still incomparable to the legendary King Taitsung. Everyone treated it as a joke. After shocking the world, they quickly fell silent and forgot about this news. On the contrary, the joint attack of several races against the human race became the biggest news in a short period of time. The entire ancient desolation was in a storm. The collisions between the various races had never stopped. Although the ancient desolation and the demon race were still regrouping, waiting for the next round of annihilation, the small collisions had never stopped. Although the other races were encroaching on the territory of the human race, they did not touch the foundation of the human race. It was not that Mount Qi did not want to, but it was deliberately preserved. On the one hand, it could be used as a force to contend against the devil race. On the other hand, among the human race, apart from the imperial court, Mount Qi was the one that retained the most essence. If one wanted to break through Mount Qi, no matter what race it was, they would have to pay a high price. That was precisely why they were so arrogant. They did not expect that Yishiwen would appear out of nowhere, and not only did he not give them any face, he even killed many demon and 100 races alliance champions in a row. Bring Yishiwen's head to see us. Otherwise, we will destroy the foundation of the human tribe. Finally, the 9 fierce beasts tribe spoke. Their words were powerful and overbearing, shaking the world. The 9 fierce beasts tribe was going to go all out against the 9 fierce beasts tribe. Originally, the 9 fierce beasts tribe could not be compared to the human race. Even the entire demon race could barely suppress the human race. However, now that the human imperial court had been broken through and countless champions had fallen, even if there were remnants of the royal and marquis tribes, their strength would not be much higher than the 9 fierce beasts tribe. After all, although these royal and marquis tribes could compete with the 9 fierce beasts tribe in the past, now that all their champions had fallen, they might only be able to compete with the 9 fierce beasts tribe if they joined forces. The serious damage that the human imperial court had suffered in the battle was evident. What was even more terrifying was that all the king division masters had died in the battle. The imperial court was the root cause of the fall of the human race. Without the protection of the imperial court, the king division masters would not last more than a few moves against the abyss demon lord. Without the protection of the king division masters, it was the key to the complete decline of the human race. Otherwise, although they had lost more than half of their ordinary masters in the imperial court, there were still many masters left in the territories of the royal and marquis. However, these people were nothing in front of a true expert of the king division. The 9 fierce beasts tribe had actually announced that they would completely wipe out the human race. Their arrogance and despotism could be seen. However, the human race could only swallow their anger because they were not strong enough. After the 9 fierce beasts tribe, the North Mountain tribe also announced that they wanted Yishiwen to present his head. Otherwise, they would join forces with the 9 fierce beasts tribe to wipe out Qi Mountain, completely wiping out the last heritage of the human race. For this reason, the major forces of the human race in Qi Mountain could be said to be in danger. Some people simply wanted to rely on the demon race or the alliance of 100 races. Even if they were to become slaves, it was much better than having their heritage cut off and their race wiped out. Didn't the ancestors of the human race rise from being slaves? In the future there would be a day when the human race would rise again. However, there were also some people who strongly opposed it. They would rather fight to the death than to bend their backs. These years, the human race had enjoyed the glory in the ancient wilderness, and many people were also unwilling to become like that. This was the last heritage of the human race. If it was also breached, it would be no different from the extinction of the human race. Even if there were many human race living in various parts of the ancient wilderness, what was the difference between them and blood? Although these human race warriors were usually high and mighty, they had always been guarding the peace and the heritage of the human race. If even they died, what hope did the human race have? The North Mountain tribe and the 9 fierce beast tribe were arrogant and domineering. Even the entire demon race and the alliance of 100 races were supporting the 2 races. They could not wait to completely wipe out the human race. This way, they could divide up the heritage of the human race in Qi Mountain. They had been coveting it for a long time. Apart from that, the Sea tribe and the Demon tribe were also restless, wanting to completely destroy the human tribe. The heritage of the human race was too rich. In addition to the battle of the imperial court, most of the things fell into the hands of the demon race. A large part was brought into Qi Mountain by the powerful human race. However, the human race was still quarreling with each other even though a storm was approaching. Many people were still arguing whether they should hand over Yishiwen in exchange for peace or not. There were also many people who bluntly said that it was Yishiwen who brought this crisis and trouble. Without him, the human race could completely lie dormant. Later, taking advantage of the war between several races, there might be a chance for them to rise again. It was a time when they needed to endure hardships. Yishiwen was too high profile and caused these troubles. Some people even said, Let Yishuan tie himself up and go to accept his punishment. Let Yishuan die to apologize to the world. Words like these filled the ears. But no one dared to really make a move, because everyone was very clear about how terrifying Yishuan's strength was. Even the Jiuying clan and the North Mountain clan suffered a big loss in the hands of Yishuan. If it was the current human race, naturally, they could not control Yishuan. They could not do anything to Yishuan at all, so they could only settle for the next best thing. Let Yishuan consider the inheritance of the entire human race and surrender himself to save the human race. He would be the hero of the human race, and so on. After all, the human race was facing a disaster, and they had no real way to deal with the devil. But at this time, the Yi family was fiercely opposed. Now, the Yi family, which was rooted in Qi Mountain, also had a skyrocketing status among the human race. And time passed in this kind of noise. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Under the push of many people, the North Mountain clan and the Jiuying clan could not bear it anymore. Let the human race become history and destroy it in one battle, the Jiuying Demon King ordered coldly and ruthlessly. Didn't they say that King Tai Tsung has manifested? Then let him come out. If King Tai Tsung is here, I will immediately retreat, the Jiuying Demon King declared disdainfully. Now even King Tai Tsung's seal has fallen into the hands of the devil race, and they still dare to play tricks. Let the human race become the slaves of the various clans again. They are only worthy of being slaves of the various clans. This was the patriarch of the North Mountain clan. As the patriarchs of the two major clans spoke, some of the vassal clans also clamored. They wanted to wipe out the human race, to turn the human race into slaves, and to uproot the human race and turn them into bloodstones. At night, the sky was cloudless, and a huge round moon hung in the sky. The cold moonlight sprinkled on the earth, illuminating countless human tragedies. The demon race, the base of the Jiuying clan. The Jiuying clan, as one of the top 10 royal clans of the demon race, had a vast territory within the demon territory. However, the Jiuying clan, in addition to the experts who were stationed in various places, most of the experts were gathered in the ancestral land. In this area, the law of water and law of fire were very active. Here, the cultivation speed of the experts of the Jiuying clan was much faster than in other places. In the distance, on a foothold on a mountain peak, a few figures appeared under the moonlight. It's not easy to intimidate the myriad clans. Let's start with the Jiuying clan. At this time, the young king among the figures said. It was King Tai Tsung. His youthful face looked at the Jiuying clan with a cold expression. Beside him was Yishuan, dressed in a green robe, standing with his hands behind his back. Next to Yishuan stood a middle-aged man who was transformed from a star beast. Next to the star beast was a tall and strong young man. It was none other than Yishuan's good friend, Yi Fan. At this time, Yi Fan's face was full of excitement. Ever since they found Yishuan, they did not gather for long before they found out that Yishuan wanted to go against the law and slaughter the entire Jiuying clan. Therefore, he volunteered to help Yishuan. Originally, he wanted to help Yishuan get rid of those troublemakers. Who knew that those guys would be so frightened by Yishuan's previous massacre that they didn't even dare to show up. This made him feel quite bored. However, was there anything more shocking than slaughtering the entire Jiuying clan? Under the moonlight, the curtain of the bloody night began. Chapter 1731. I don't have much time left. King Tai Tsung's face revealed a weathered expression. I originally wanted to return to the primordial era and pass away peacefully. However, I never expected to encounter something like this. Thank the heavens for allowing me to do my last bit for the human race at a time like this. Yi Fan didn't know King Tai Tsung's identity. He only knew that he was a very powerful senior. However, Yishuan had a deep understanding of him. He had a complicated expression on his face. He never thought that he would meet such a peerless figure like King Tai Tsung. However, now he didn't have much time left. During this period, Yishiwen also heard about some past events from King Taitsung. Not long after he was crowned king and entered the imperial court, he learned about the existence of the divine battlefield. He originally wanted to explore it. However, he found that the seal of the battlefield was about to break. These deities were about to break the seal and rush out. Once they rushed out, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, he could only stay in the divine battlefield to guard it. For countless years, he had fought with deities in the battlefield many times. Some time ago, he had encountered the Abyss Devil Lord. Although the Abyss Devil Lord had suffered serious injuries in the battle, Taitsung King, who was already at the end of his rope, was on the verge of dying. If Yishiwen hadn't come, Taitsung King would have passed away within a month. Later, Yishiwen revealed his identity. The Yi family and King Taitsung's bloodline were originally very close. Naturally, the relationship between them was not ordinary. King Taitsung also asked Yishiwen to bring him back to ancient times. Who knew that now, this peerless figure of the past only had a trace of obsession left. When he returned to ancient times, even this last trace of obsession was about to disappear with the wind. 10 days passed. King Taitsung's decree that Yishiwen mentioned had also become a joke. Originally, King Taitsung's name was still shocking to many foreign races. However, as 10 days passed, the legendary King Taitsung didn't have any intention of coming out. Therefore, everyone regarded this as a joke. No one can survive from such a distant era, even if he is King Taitsung. If King Taitsung is here, let him come out. I don't believe it. This must be Yishiwen's bluff. There is nothing to be afraid of. Trample the human race, trample the human race. Yishiwen and the others were finally going to make their move tonight. Yishiwen, we don't have much time. So we must act fast. Otherwise, we won't be able to deter the foreign races. That will give our race some breathing space. King Taitsung indifferently said. Yes, first the Jiuing clan, then the North Mountain clan. All of them must die. I want to see if they have such a big appetite. Yishiwen sneered. The ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe was an incomparably huge mountain range. At this moment, under the night sky, there were still many noises and roars from the demon clan. Countless nine-headed infants in the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe did not realize that the real danger was coming. After tonight, the world will be shaken. We will use the heads of the nine-headed infants tribe to pay tribute to our fallen brethren. Yishiwen shouted loudly. His hands tore a huge crack in the void, and the crack spread out. Within it, countless mechanical beasts rushed out. These were all mechanical beasts from the Demon King's treasury. There were hundreds of thousands of them. Although there were only hundreds of thousands of them, the weakest was at the 9th level of the celestial realm. Among them, there were tens of thousands of celestial realm-level mechanical beasts. Such a mighty army could even slaughter a giant like the nine-headed infants tribe. Suddenly, countless mechanical beasts rushed out, alarming the entire nine-headed infants tribe. After all, the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe was the ancestral land of the demon clan. Countless arrays were instantly activated. These mechanical beasts rushed out from all directions and directly rushed into the nine-headed infants' demon king. Who dares to invade the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe? Are you tired of living? Suddenly, a loud roar came from the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe. Past the decree of King Taitsung. The nine-headed infants tribe does not respect the decree. Kill! Yishiwen shouted. What, King Taitsung? What a joke! Yishiwen, you are Yishiwen! At this time, all the members of the nine-headed infants tribe were panicking. They never thought that they would be attacked. As one of the 10 royal tribes of the demon clan, they had a strong foundation. Who dared to attack them? It had always been them shouting and killing. Now, someone actually attacked their ancestral land. At this time, the nine-headed infants tribe was in a frenzy. A great enemy had come to the nine-headed infants tribe. Who dared to attack the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe without any confidence? Boom! Yishuan directly slammed his palm into the ancestral land of the Nine Infants tribe. It was unknown how many great arrays were destroyed, but a large part of the ancestral land of the Nine Infants tribe had been destroyed. Bang! The entire ancestral land of the Nine-Headed Infants tribe began to shake violently. Many members of the Nine-Headed Infants tribe saw this scene and were scared to death. It was too scary. How did Yishuan grow into such a terrifying existence in such a short period of time? At this time, the star beast finally made its move. It formed an incomparably huge beast claw and directly tore a huge crack in the array of the Nine-Headed Infants tribe. Its original form was a type of nine-headed long-legged water-fire viper. It was tempered by the power of water and fire every day and was already very tyrannical. However, compared to Yishuan, it was still not enough. Not to mention, its realm was far from Yishuan's. In an instant, this incomparably huge beast claw cracked. Blood splattered in the void as it began to break apart. Its tight skin directly cracked. The scales on the surface of its skin also shattered piece by piece. It had just made a move, but it had already suffered greatly from Yishuan's hands. However, the power of Yishuan's palm was still gushing out continuously. In an instant, it swept out. Bang! An incomparably loud sound of metal clashing could be heard. This huge beast claw began to crack inch by inch. Immediately, a figure fell out of the void. It was a middle-aged man. His face still had a look of disbelief. How could this be possible? Although he knew that the eldest prince of the Nine-Headed Infants tribe had died tragically in Yishuan's hands, he did not care at all at that time. This was because he felt that the eldest prince was simply too reckless. He actually dared to bring a person along. Otherwise, how could things have turned out like this? Moreover, his martial power was many times stronger than that of the eldest prince. In the Nine-Headed Infants tribe, he also had a high status and was very powerful. Who knew that he would fall into a complete disadvantage and even be seriously injured in the first exchange with Yishuan? At this time, how could he not understand that this was an unparalleled and terrifying enemy? Being targeted by such an enemy, even the Nine-Headed Infants tribe would probably be seriously injured. It was laughable that they did not even put Yishuan in their eyes previously, and wanted him to die. Previously, they did not make a move. Other than the fact that they had to prepare too much to wipe out the human race, it was also because the name of King Taitsung had truly stunned them. 10 days. They also wanted to see if King Taitsung would come out after 10 days. And now, the existence of such a god of death had finally appeared. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.